Tonight, the massive recovery effort goes on. Americans search for answers, and their leaders contemplate action. There you see a night vigil currently at Union Square in New York City. That's a couple of blocks above where all the tragedy took place. Some brief updates for you. The United States Capitol was briefly evacuated today. Dick Cheney has moved on to Camp David to keep him apart from the president. Some airlines have restarted operations. However, Chicago's O'Hare, Washington's Reagan, and the 3 New York City airports all remain closed. And the black box from the United flight that went down in Pennsylvania has been found. I spoke with Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld just moments ago, and the first thing I wanted to know is how this has affected him personally.
It's a very emotional thing to see the damage that's been done to our country, not just the Pentagon, but of course in New York City as well. On the other hand, you look around and see the wonderful response of the people here in the Department of Defense who have helped save lives, the wonderful firefighters and Red Cross people, and so people who've come from all over Virginia and Maryland and neighboring states to help. They're still very much in the process of bringing bodies out of this building, and it will take some time to do it. The damage was so just enormous, and the power of that aircraft filled with jet fuel driving almost completely through the building, just almost to the inner courtyard. So it's on the one hand, it's a terribly sad, difficult time, and your heart goes out to the friends and families of the casualties and the people who've been killed. On the other hand, you see how patriotic the American people are, the wonderful response they've shown, and it tells a lot about our country.
But there's a lot of personal pain, isn't there?
Indeed.
Yeah. Mr. Secretary, first, well, let's hopscotch cover a lot of bases. Secretary of State Powell described Saddam Hussein today, quote, as one of the leading terrorists on the face of the earth. Is Iraq considered in your equation of one of these people we're at war with?
I think that the President of the United States has said it correctly, that there are a number of terrorists, and some of them are countries, states, others are non-state entities. They have a pattern of working somewhat together from time to time. There's a number of states that harbor and facilitate the active work of terrorists who may or may not be nationals of their country. There's no question but that all one has to do is to read the words of Saddam Hussein by his own testimony, his own self-indictment. He is a promoter and an encourager of terrorism. He has been for a good long time, and he unquestionably is today.
What, Secretary Rumsfeld, will you have to know before we do anything? I mean, what do you have to know?
Well, you know, what you need to do is to establish some linkages between an organization or an organization that's harboring and facilitating an organization that you can reasonably say has been connected to either this event or other events. And the President of the United States has decided that terrorism strikes at the very heart of our way of life. We are a free people, and the purpose of terrorism is to terrorize. It's to alter behavior, and to the extent free people have to alter their behavior, they're no longer free. And he's decided that there has to be a broad-based, sustained effort against terrorism on this earth.
So if a country is behind it, then the country bears the prey of us.
Well, indeed, any country that harbors and facilitates and encourages or finances or even tolerates that kind of activity in their country clearly is as responsible as the terrorist.
Do you fear when something like this happens, other terrorist groups not involved in this suddenly looking for a way to take advantage?
Well, there's no question. There's a lot of that can happen in the world. But what we're dealing with here is something that is distinctively new to the United States of America because of our geography and our history. We have not had to deal with this kind of problem. Other countries have. Well, We've now arrived at a point where our country itself, as well as American interests around the globe, have been and can be seriously damaged. And it's going to require as the President said, a war, a major, long-range, broad-based, sustained effort to see that this does not damage our way of life.
What about the surprise? Were you as surprised as everyone, Mr. Secretary, at the lack of intelligence here? 4 planes taken, 3 succeed in their missions, and if not for the heroics, there might have been a 4th success.
Larry, I guess I've kind of stopped being surprised in my life. I expect what people call surprises. You know, there's a saying that says that there are known knowns, there are things we know, there are known unknowns, that is to say things we know that we don't know, but we at least know we don't know them. And then there are unknown unknowns, the things we don't know, and those are the dangerous ones. And the world is a big place. There are an awful lot of people, there's an awful lot of locations, and it is physically impossible to have intelligence that will enable you to know everything going on in this globe. And a terrorist can attack at any time, in any place, using any technique. It's not possible to defend at every time, in every place, against every technique. That's why the President is so on the mark that we have to go after and root out the terrorists and those who are harboring those terrorists. That's the only way that problem can be dealt with.
And how, just a couple more moments, how do we define retaliation? Do we retaliate through a legal means? Do we retaliate through an armed force? What's the definition in your head of retaliation?
Larry, I don't think of it as retaliation. I don't think of it as punishment. I think of it as self-defense. The United States of America has every right to defend itself. And that is what it is about. It is consciously saying that countries and entities and people who actively oppose the United States and damage our interests by acts of violence, acts of war, are our enemies. And they are people and organizations and entities and states that we have every right to defend ourselves against. And that is what this is about. It is to protect the freedom and the way of life of the American people. Self-defense. Yes, sir.
Is bin Laden definitely near or at the top of this list?
There is no question, but Osama bin Laden has been for many years now, by his own pronouncements, anti-West, anti-U.S., anti a number of regimes in the Arab world. He has a very well-financed network. It is at the right moment, the President and the United States government will decide what it intends to do by way of characterizing countries or characterizing individuals like Osama bin Laden, and whether or not in our judgment they have or do not have a direct relationship to this activity, but that time has not come.
And any comments on the Capitol Hill evacuation earlier?
No, I really don't. I've been in and around government for a long time, and I've seen bomb threats in buildings that I've occupied many, many times. As a matter of fact, we had one here at the Pentagon this morning at, I believe, 7 o'clock or something. And it is not unusual. We learn to live with these things, and we come back to work and go about our business.
And those military planes flying around Washington and New York, that will continue?
We have called down the intercept aircraft and the AWACS from across the country as commercial aviation started up today, I believe, at 11 o'clock Eastern Time. We have continued to fly some so-called CAP aircraft in the Washington-New York corridor, and I have not made a decision as to when I will call that down. And we do, however, have interceptors on strip alert, 15-minute alert, across the country on some 26 bases, so we've got an awful lot of men and women who are doing a great job.
Oh, thanks, Mr. Secretary. Always good seeing you. Hope next time it's under better circumstances.
Thank you very much, Larry.
We'll have some compelling survivor stories in a moment. Here's what a portion of what President Bush had to say this morning.
Through the tears of sadness, I see an opportunity. Make no mistake about it, this nation is sad. But we're also tough and resolute. And now's an opportunity to do generations a favor by coming together and whipping terrorism, hunting it down, finding it, and holding them accountable.
You're watching a special edition of Larry King Live. We'll be with you live throughout the weekend, by the way, and in a little while, Senator Hillary Rodham Clinton will join us. Right now, let's go to New York. Standing by are Brian and Jean Monahan. Their 21-year-old son, also named Brian, is missing in the World Trade Center. John Genovese, his brother Steve, is missing at the World Trade Center. Steve worked as a trader for Cantor Fitzgerald on the 104th floor. And Lenny and Leona Zeppelin, their son Mark, is missing as well, and he also worked for Cantor Fitzgerald. Let's start with Brian and Jean. I understand, Brian, this was the, second day your son was on the job?
Yes, it was, Larry.
And when did you hear from him at all that morning, Jean, or
Yes,
either
did.
one?
I did.
Wow.
He called me at 9 o'clock and told me that the building next door to him just exploded, and it was on, and I said, what do you mean exploded? And he said, flames are coming out, people are on the roof, I gotta go. And he hung up, and that was the last I heard from him.
And then we have heard, Brian, that he could have, he was going to leave Building 2 and then went back in to volunteer?
Well, the story that we got, Larry, was one of the girls that he was with, they were going down to the stairs. He was with them. She made it to the 78th floor with him and his partner, Maurice. And when she got out the building, they were asking for volunteers, and when she turned around, he was gone. So apparently he either went back into the building or he stayed in the building to try to help.
And who, Jean, if anyone, gives you any information about him, if at all?
I haven't gotten really any information. I've checked lists, I've called hospitals, but it's still, everything's unknown.
You're going to go to Bellevue tomorrow? What's at Bellevue?
Bellevue has another list they put up. They seem to update the list every day, they say, so tomorrow I'll just go back downtown again.
What kind of boy is your son, Brian?
He's a happy fella. He's a great kid. Everybody that knows him likes him. He's always got a smile on his face, as you can see by his pictures. Yeah. I've never heard anybody say anything bad about him. He's a good kid.
Jeannie, is he the kind of kid that would run back in to help?
Yes, he would.
We wish you the best.
Thank
Brian
you.
and Jean Monahan. Now joining us is John Genovese. His brother Steve is missing as well at the World Trade Center. Steve worked on the 104th floor. He was a trader for Cantor Fitzgerald. John, when did you last talk to Steve?
I did not speak to him on Tuesday morning. He actually left a message with his wife, Shelley, right after the first plane hit. He said he was just going to try and evacuate the building as soon as he could.
Is he your younger brother or older brother?
He's a year younger, Larry.
He left a message for his wife, right?
That is correct.
Do you know what he said?
He said, Shelley, I think the building just got hit by a plane or a bomb or something like that, and I have to get out of here. I have to leave as soon as I can.
John, what do you do, by the way?
I'm also a NASDAQ trader for JP Securities.
Do you work nearby?
Yes, I do. I work on 60 Wall Street, which is roughly 3 or 4 blocks away from the World Trade Center.
How did you learn of what was going on, and when did you first fear for Steve?
Actually, somebody in my trading department, Larry, came over to me and said something really bad just happened at the World Trade Center. And then we put on the TV and actually saw what happened. I tried to reach him by phone, and usually his trading department picks up the phone on the first or second ring. And when it rang 7 or 8 times, I knew something bad happened.
So you feared the worst almost immediately?
Absolutely.
This had to all be incomprehensible to you, right, John?
Yes, but Steve's been through this actually in 1993 when the first bombing happened. He actually made it down 104 flights and was safe.
Wow.
And and I thought it was the same result was going to happen this time around.
Did you ever worry about him working in that building, especially after what happened years ago?
Yes, I did.
How's his wife, Shelley, holding up?
She's doing great. She's doing the best she can. We're surrounded by friends and family, and we're just all pulling together.
And are you still checking with hotlines and hospitals? Are still keeping hope going?
Larry, I've called many hotlines. I must have walked 20 miles yesterday going between St. Vincent's, Bellevue, and checking lists at every hospital, and just not losing the faith.
One can only imagine what you're going through, John.
It's
we wish
tough,
you the
Larry.
best.
Thank you very much.
And now joining us, Lena and Leona Zeppelin. Their son, Mark, is missing at the World Trade Center. Mark is 33 years old. He also worked for Cantor Fitzgerald. Leona, when did you last hear from Mark?
I actually spoke to Mark the day before the incident. I did not hear from him the morning of the tragedy. I found that out when I called my daughter-in-law just casually, and she was screaming, and she said a friend just told her that something went into the World Trade Center right near Mark's office. And I started to cry, and I turned on the TV, and I just couldn't imagine such a tragedy happening. And when I saw where it hit and I knew where his office was located, immediately I just lost it. And I really didn't sleep. And then the next day, we've been in the city, and we've been in the city today, checking lists, going from place to place, just doing whatever we can to find out if anyone knows of his whereabouts or who spoke to him in his last moments, and even just to meet somebody, to speak to anyone who's going through the same experience as we are in that knew Mark in Cantor Fitzgerald. I know his daughter-in-law would like that, to make the connection, because we're devastated.
Lenny, where were you?
I was in my school. I'm a principal, Larry, and I received a notice from my wife that the plane had hit the building, and I was in shock. I ran home through the Rockaways with my car and picked up my wife, and we moved from there.
Is Mark your only child?
No, we have a daughter named Jocelyn, who's a speech therapist in Manhattan.
The firm he worked for, how long was he with Cantor Fitzgerald? They've really been hit the worst, I guess, as a firm.
He was there about 5.5 years.
Were you ever concerned, Lenny, at all about him being on such a high floor in such a building like that?
Quite truthfully, Larry, I never thought of it. I always was secure. He was happy. He loved his firm, and he loved his job, and we never thought that something as monstrous as this was going to happen.
All right, so what are you doing now? What do you do as the others have done? Go around the hospitals, go on internet? What do you do?
Well, that's part of the story. We went around yesterday to all the hospitals. We checked all the hospitals in New Jersey, and we went to the Chelsea Pier, and then we were just about finished at 5 o'clock when we decided to go on the internet. And when we went on the internet on NewYork.com through Microsoft MSN.com, we saw my son's name listed on the internet as a survivor. And we were shocked that he was on the internet. It said 1642, the time,
right.
Fine condition.
Right.
It gave us a case number, and we were related. We were not going to leave New York until but it didn't tell us what hospital or where he was. So we ran around. We finally ended up at the Pierre Hotel where Cantor Fitzgerald has a staging section to notify everyone. And they said that list was erroneous. That list was a fraud. There were no members. We don't have any of those our members on that list. We haven't heard of any from Cantor Fitzgerald that was on that list. So I was really very, very down. I waited until 8:30 until they were going to broadcast the names of the hospitals associated with the victims. It never came. I ran home with my wife. We went on the internet. My son's name was still on. There was a different time, a different case number. I wrote to the person who was in charge of that list, and he sent it back to me, a message saying he was sorry, there were errors on the list, he doesn't know where my son is, and I asked him to validate the list where he got I still don't know where he got my son's name from.
What a tragedy.
Yeah, I mean, it's
So your
bad
hopes
enough.
were
Yeah.
high as possible.
Right, we were elated and hysterical with, in a positive, just feeling terrific. And then it was almost worse because then we went really down to ground zero in terms of our own emotions, because we just could not believe that he would survive. We even said, gee, this is going to be the story of the century, how he did get down. And we were so thrilled. We were just doing whatever we could to find him, and obviously it was just worse for us.
Thank you, Lenny and Leona. We wish you every good wish, and remind our viewers that anyone looking for people missing in these attacks can email photos to missing@cnn.com. missing@cnn.com. The night vigil continues. This is at Union Square area. That's around 14th Street in Manhattan. Joining us now here in Los Angeles is another devastated gentleman. He is Michael Cherkasky. He is president and CEO of Kroll Incorporated, the risk consulting company. 7 years ago, that company was hired by the Port Authority to assess the risk and security at the World Trade Center and at area airports. Michael's a former prosecutor. He prosecuted John Gotti. And he lost in that accident the former FBI agent John O'Neill, who you recently hired, right?
We recently placed him at the Port Authority.
To,
in fact, head their security. And it is absolutely devastating to have us consult with them, the Port Authority, and to try to put in great security in a client who is conscious about its obligations to put in security and to protect its people and to protect its clients, and to have this devastating attack occur and to fail to be able to do anything about it.
in all your security planning, and that's your business, right?
That's our business.
Did you ever think of anything like this?
Well, you think about things, but you don't think about the staccato attacks that in fact occurred here. 1, 2, 3, you try to take the punch. You have concentric circles of security that you try to plan for. You try to do assessments. You try to do that kind of concentric circles. But to be able to be prepared for this, Mr. O'Neill, who was one of the world's experts in terrorism,
He was on this show once.
had understood these kind of terrorist activities. We could locally plan. We think O'Neill would have been proud of our planning.
Where was he?
He was actually in the first tower that was struck, fairly high up, and we were planning to have a meeting with that group at 9:30 that day with some of our people.
Was anything learned from that first attack years ago?
Well, what was learned were obviously lessons forgotten, Larry, unfortunately.
Like?
Lessons of vigilance. Unfortunately, maybe we only lost 6 people that day. But we learned about this group. We learned what they were willing to do. We learned about the cell nature of it. But we forgot those lessons. We didn't have good intelligence. We had good local planning at the Port Authority, but it didn't do any good.
All right. Was it also a failure of your company?
Well, we don't think it was a failure of our company or of the port. We don't think that there have been conversations about how do you get people out of there quicker. Could we have gotten people out of the South Tower quicker? There's been some discussions about people were told to stay still.
Yeah, or go back in.
Or go back in. But there was an assessment phase. No one knew that second jet was going to strike. And in fact, in the assessment phase, the danger of falling debris from that first tower very well could have been the greatest danger, so that you couldn't presume that a second jet was going to hit. You just couldn't presume it.
Do you know how those people who were told back up got those reports?
Well, we've heard it was on PAs. One of the things was, unfortunately, the brain center of the Port Authority security was in fact taken out in that first strike. We believe that in fact there was good assessment was going on about what in fact do you do in those 25 minutes or so.
Is complacency, as time goes on, human?
It is absolutely human, but it's not professional. And the complacency that we all had as security experts, our intelligence, our law enforcement, our military has, is not acceptable. We knew we had this enemy, and we had to take more than local preventive actions. Unfortunately, we didn't learn the lessons of '93.
How are you reacting personally to this?
I am absolutely devastated. Every day this week I've in fact cried, because I see the stories that you have said here, and in fact it is our job to have the right stuff and prevent this stuff. I spent most of my life trying to do that, and to have in fact have this kind of failure, I'm personally devastated.
Have you talked to officials at the World Trade Center?
We have people down there. We're talking to the officials down there. We're talking to the Port Authority. They're devastated. They think, and we think, that they've done everything they could have done. I don't blame the structural engineers. I don't blame the assessment people. What happened here, we believe, was more than a local failure. There was no local failure.
Port Authority covers a lot of areas.
It does.
Are you worried about other ones?
Absolutely. We're worried. Anyone who knows the bin Laden group or these groups understand this is not the end of this. We can't be terrorized this. We're in this war, but this is not the end. This is in fact a group that is bent on killing Americans. It did it in Africa. It did it in Europe. It's going to do it again.
Your expertise is security.
Yes.
And that's supposed to be the American expertise. So how did this fail? How did the American intelligence fail, in your opinion?
I think we were fighting a war that was past. We were fighting the last war. We weren't fighting this new war. We were fighting the Cold War. We had our devices, our services were in fact geared to that. This intelligence services. We weren't doing the kind of things where we had to get in our hands dirty.
As Secretary Rumsfeld said, the unknown unknown.
The unknown unknown. And we didn't understand the disease. We should have understood the disease in '93. We should understand it. It's hard to recognize a disease if you haven't seen it. But we should have seen it in '93. Unfortunately, we didn't recognize the disease. Now we have, but we lost thousands of people.
No one could have said, though, that one day 3 or 4 planes will be taken and flown into these buildings.
It wouldn't have been a good novel. It would have been too
That's
extreme.
Right. Would have been turned down.
Would have been turned down.
Good luck, Michael. When are you going back to New York?
As soon as I can get there.
Michael Cherkasky, the president and CEO of Kroll Incorporated. I spoke a little while ago with New York Senator Hillary Rodham Clinton a very short time ago, and our first question was she concerned about the evacuation of the Capitol today?
Well, Larry, I had already voted so that I had left the Capitol. I was on my way back to the Russell Building so that I could talk with you tonight, and I was very concerned, but I quickly learned that there wasn't any real basis for concern, but we're taking every precaution we can, and that was one of the necessary ones.
The president's going to your state tomorrow. Are you going to?
Yes, I am. I went to the White House earlier this afternoon. We had an excellent discussion. I met first in the Oval Office with the president, my colleague, Senator Schumer, the 2 senators from Virginia. We pledged our support. We received a briefing from the president, and I was delighted to also learn that the president would support the request that Senator Schumer and I have made so that New York gets the resources that we need to deal with this extraordinary tragedy. Then we had a larger meeting in the cabinet room with representatives and senators from a number of states. The president was resolute, determined. I felt very positive about the meeting.
Will you be traveling with him?
Yes, I will. I'll be going with the president back to New York, where I was yesterday with the governor and the mayor, after we have the national prayer service at the National Cathedral.
You know, you were in those seats. Sandy Berger told Associated Press today that your administration, the Clinton administration, waged a military strike against bin Laden in the final days of that presidency. What can you gather this must be like?
Well, I told the president today, and I have publicly stated this, Larry, that I do have some understanding of the extraordinary burdens that any president bears, and a time like this just magnifies them immeasurably. This is a different kind of war, and make no mistake about it, we are at war. But we're at war against an enemy that doesn't have a capital, doesn't have a state. When Pearl Harbor was bombed, we knew where to look, and we knew what we needed to do to win. So this is a more difficult time, but I'm absolutely confident we are up to meeting this challenge. During the years that my husband was in the White House, you'll recall that we did launch an attack on some of Osama bin Laden's assets in Afghanistan, and we were successful in a limited way with respect to some of the personnel and equipment, but we were not successful in eradicating him and his network from the terrorist activities that they foment. So this I know, and the President knows. Nobody is in any way misled about the profound nature of this challenge, but we have to be up to it, and we are up to it, and I'm going to support the President in the actions he takes.
And is your husband as well fully in support?
Absolutely. You know, Bill was in Australia when this happened. The President sent a plane to bring him back. I think they really took measures to secure all of our former presidents, but particularly my husband and the President's father, because both of them had taken action against certain organizations and individuals. So I was very grateful for that. So Bill is back home. He's in New York, and he has made it very clear, both privately in his conversations and his public statements, that he is 100% behind the President.
Now, the President's doing everything he can for you and your state. Are you giving him carte blanche as to what he can do internationally?
Well, I'm certainly supporting his authority to take those actions that are necessary on behalf of our country and our homeland defense. There is, as we speak, an effort underway to draft an appropriate resolution that will express the sense of the Senate. I've been seeking the advice of some of the senior members who've been around here a while, who were part of the Gulf War resolution and even going back further than that. So I'm confident that we will come up with an agreement that will give the President what he needs.
What are you saying to those who ask you in defense and the like about how far we go with this?
Well, I think that we have to clearly define what we know about the threats, what we know about the perpetrators, what we know about those who harbor terrorists. I was very pleased that the President in his speech to the country said that it's not only America's goal to track down and hold accountable those who carried out this dastardly attack, but also to serve notice on anyone who harbors terrorists. And I would go even further, as the President has in our discussion today. We are going to be looking at those who finance terrorism, those who give any aid or comfort whatsoever, not only governments, but institutions, individuals, organizations, wherever they might be found.
And finally, what do you say to those New Yorkers who are still missing loved ones?
Well, you know, we're only beginning to see the depth of anguish and pain that will be visible in the days and weeks ahead. We don't know yet how many people will never go home again, Larry. We do know that we have orphans and widows and widowers. We have mothers and fathers who have suffered what no parent should ever suffer, the loss of a child. We've got a lot of hard work. You know, when we think about responding to this attack, of course we think first and foremost about defending ourselves and tracking down those who did it. We think about the hard work of rescue and reconstruction and rebuilding, but let's not forget that we have a work of compassion ahead of us.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Larry.
Before we meet some other compelling stories, let's check in with our Union Square vigil going on right now at Union Square, New York. And there is Senti Toy and her daughter, Numi. Senti, what brought you to the vigil tonight?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
What brought you to the vigil tonight?
Because I do not believe in violence, and I would like the world to be more full of peace and love.
Well, do you live in Manhattan?
Yes, I do.
And how old is little Numi there?
Numi is 4.5.
The world should be full of peace and love, but what happened wasn't peace or love.
No, it wasn't.
Do you think we should retaliate?
No, that's why we're here, because we do not want to retaliate.
So what are you saying to the government?
That we should not act with violence, but instead with love, because violence will only lead to more violence, and that's not good.
Thank you, Senti. Good luck,
Thank
Numi.
you.
Senti, Toy, and Numi at the Union Square Vigil. Joining us now in Los Angeles are Bradley and Deborah Burlingame. Their brother Charles was the pilot of American Airlines Flight 77, scheduled from Dulles to L.A. It crashed into the Pentagon. In New York, David Thale and Charles Mankin, David and Carl Mankin in Washington. David and Carl are civilians working for Armed Public Affairs. Both have seen active military duty, and both are survivors of the attack on the Pentagon. First, we'll start with Bradley and Deborah. Charles was the oldest of
Yes.
the brothers. Tell me about your late captain brother, Bradley.
We called him Chick. That was his nickname.
Chick.
He was Charles III and an Annapolis graduate. He started flying a couple of years after he graduated from Annapolis. He's been flying for 30 years. He was a Navy fighter pilot, and even after he left the Navy, he served in the Naval Reserve, and ironically worked for many years in the Pentagon in the Naval Reserve with his naval colleagues. It's so
He
ironic.
worked where he died.
Yes.
Well, we don't know that his office was actually there because they've been renovating the Pentagon for the last 2 years.
But he'd been at the Pentagon, right?
Oh,
Many
oh,
times.
Yes, yes.
How did you first learn of this, Deborah?
Well, it was surreal, actually, because I was asleep at 6 in the morning and
In California?
No, here in Los Angeles.
Yeah, in California. You were in California.
Yes, in
Right.
California. And we have another brother in Pennsylvania, and his wife, who is a very, very dear friend of mine, Anine, called me at 6 in the morning and she said, "I'm sorry to wake you up, but you've got to go turn on the television set right now. A plane just crashed into the World Trade Center." And she said, "I was watching it and another plane crashed in minutes ago." And I quick rush turned it on, and I
Not
couldn't.
thinking of your brother at all, right?
Well, no, because
wasn't flying out of
no,
there.
because you're not thinking sensibly, and I was thinking, well, this is New York. My brother flies out of Dulles, and he's usually going to the West Coast, so he wouldn't be up in New York airspace.
So you're watching in horror at this scene.
And I'm watching in horror,
Then what?
and it also appeared they were already replaying the second strike, and it didn't look like the kind of plane my brother flew. It looked too small. If you can imagine an airplane that big dwarfed by those towers. So Anine said, "Gee, you don't think that could be Chick, do you?" And I said, no, but this is horrible. And I was immediately thinking, those poor pilots, because, of course, pilots always say they are the first at the scene of any accident, being up there in the cockpit. They see horrific things, you know, and don't live to tell the tale. So I was just devastated. She was crying, I was crying. Brad called me. And then I saw the report on the Pentagon, because that happened maybe 20 minutes later. An NBC reporter was saying there's been a bomb explosion of some kind on the west side of the
and
Pentagon.
you called, you knew?
I knew. I had received a phone call within 60 minutes from a colleague of my brother's who had already joined his wife at their house to inform her. American pilots and all airline pilots, I'm sure the United pilots, this was the same scene at their household as well, are close-knit families. And
He told you on the phone?
Chick's friend Tom called, and I, like Deborah, had been watching the television. I had an eerie feeling. My wife asked me what was going on, and Tom called me. As soon as I heard his voice, I knew. And of course,
And you told Deborah?
I called my sister, and she called the rest of the family. It was a terrible moment.
And he called me. He was screaming into the phone. And, of course, I used to be a flight attendant many, many years ago, so in addition to my brother, we really feel a connection with airline people and have a lot of airline friends, apart from my brother. And so we're devastated to see these scenes like this, and this is just an extraordinary scene. So I didn't know what he was saying. He was screaming, and then I caught the word Chick. It's Chick. And there's no words to describe. You hear crime victims' families being told, this is a murder scene. This is a mass murder, and it's incomprehensible.
Your mother died last year?
10 months ago.
Your father's buried at Arlington.
Yep.
Chick has a daughter from a first marriage.
That's right.
2 stepsons from the current marriage.
Yes.
How's the wife handling all this?
Sherry is upset, naturally, very, very upset. But the best thing is, and it's quite comforting for us, is that she's got her family around her. She's got people from American Airlines around her, Navy buddies.
Any of you planning to go to Washington?
We're trying to put together a memorial next week. It's difficult. There's so much going on. And
Where did Chick live?
Chick lived in Oak Hill, which is not too far from the Dulles area. And he was actually planning part of a 30th year reunion at the United States Naval Academy next weekend. And
there'll be a burial at Arlington. Right?
We hope so.
We hope.
With any remains that are found, right?
Well, he'll be interred in some way. And of course, we are assuming he's entitled to be buried at Arlington because he was a 29-year naval veteran. But the thing is, even with my father, who was buried there with honors right near the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, we had to wait for almost 3 weeks for his burial because the World War II generation is dying in, record numbers, and you wait if you have any kind of ceremony. Angry, Bradley?
My emotions are across the board. I'm sad. I'm in disbelief. Yes, I'm angry. If I could find the people who did this, I would sacrifice my life to do something to them.
Deborah?
Someone asked me if I've been going to church. Well, there's been too much happening for me to have the quiet time to be able to do that. I feel a tremendous responsibility to my brother to take care of certain things. But the idea of going to church would seem so insincere to me right now because our religion is about forgiveness, and it's not in me right now. No.
My best to both of you.
Thank you very much.
Anything we can do.
Thanks very much.
Bradley and Deborah Burlingame. Now joining us in Washington are 2 gentlemen who survived the sadness of the death of their brother. They are David Thale and Carl Mankin. David, we'll start with you. What do you do at the Pentagon?
I work for the Army Public Affairs. I'm a public affairs specialist in the Pentagon.
And Carl, what do you do?
I'm also a public affairs specialist. Dave worked 25 feet behind me when the blast occurred.
So you 2 work right near each other?
Yes. We do. We were working in the same office, separated by a drywall wall.
What happened, David?
At the moment of impact, Larry, it was just, if you have ever been around an artillery round, I mean, I am a former soldier, Carl is a reserve officer, and I liken it to being downrange when, during training when an artillery round hits the ground. I mean, there's just a certain whoosh that you hear, and at the moment of impact, there's a vacuum that occurs that just simply sucks the air right out of your lungs. I happened to be talking to a friend at the time who was jokingly telling me, the Pentagon is probably next, because she had called to ask if I knew about the World Trade Center, and of course we did. The Pentagon was abuzz with the news of that. And she jokingly said, the Pentagon's probably next, you ought to get out, and we shared some laughs over that. And then she said again, please get out. And it was at that moment that the walls just came in on me. And I knew immediately, holy heavens, we are under attack. And I credit my friend with buying me a couple of extra seconds when I finally landed about 25 feet away and in another office. The shock of being under attack was already over. I mean, I had already processed that information. Before I took flight, I knew we're under attack. So when I landed, there was no shock. I knew we'd been hit. Let's move on.
And Carl, what are your remembrances of 2 days ago?
My wife, Hope, had called me, and again, we knew about the attack and that was taking place in New York. We saw the plane that had hit the second tower. I went back to my desk and was working at my PC. Again, the sound was just like just a huge explosion. The tearing of metal, the ripping of boards, the walls collapsing, and I was in my chair, and my PC hit me in my face. I have a bruise on my head. But the force was so tremendous, and the thing is, it shakes you. It goes right through you. It shakes you to the core. Personally, like I said, it can shake your mental, it can shake your physical, but my spiritual did not shake, and my profound faith in God my family, my extended family, my church family. My heart goes out to those people. And
you would understand, Carl, of the Burlingames not quite feeling that way at the moment.
Pardon me? I didn't hear that.
You can understand our previous guests not quite feeling that way.
Yes, and again, I cannot personally get in that position to know how they feel, but my heart does go out to, my prayers go for comfort and just to know that they've been touched. I was watching the news last night, and the story about the 11-year-old Rodney Dickens, I was in tears. And there's a magic there, it touches you. But it touched me personally that, again, when you get hit, we both knew what it was, and we both knew we had to get out of there.
And we're looking at a picture of you right after that attack. David, do you feel lucky?
I do feel lucky, and it's funny that you asked that question because I was just about to tell you when you were asking whether or not we shared the same emotions with the previous guest. Carl and I are the lucky ones. We escaped that day with our life. It was hell there for a couple of minutes getting out of the Pentagon, but the bottom line is we escaped with our lives. And I hope you'll understand when Carl and I want to express our concern for all of those people who still have loved ones buried in the rubble, both in the Pentagon and in New York. And our prayers are with those people, and of course our support and our concern are with those rescue workers and all of the hundreds of thousands of volunteers who are just coming to the site and seeing whatever they can do.
Because their brother died a few feet from you.
Indeed, he did. I haven't reached the anger point yet, to tell you the truth. I walked out of that Pentagon, and for the last couple of days, you go through every emotion there is, but I just haven't hit the anger emotion yet. Frankly, I'm still just in a peaceful state.
Carl, are you back at work?
Yes, Larry, I am. In fact, this morning when I walked in about 6:30, when I was walking up there, actually it was later, and I was in the south parking, there was 3 columns of people that were moving into the building, and I had a chance to look at almost all the faces that were facing me. And I saw some solemn faces, but I saw some faces of determination, faces that were smiling, things that you normally don't see because we live in a very hectic society, but we're reaching out to neighbors. We need to reach out and touch each other and just hold on to people and let them know that this too shall pass. And just to remember those that still have people unaccounted for and are still missing.
David, do you know anyone who died?
I do not know anyone who died. We had some people whom I knew who were listed as missing there for a while, but eventually they were all accounted for. I do have some friends who had friends and co-workers who were unaccounted for. I have to tell you, Larry, that it was absolutely amazing to watch when Carl and I came out of the Pentagon, and there was chaos there for a little while as everyone just tried to figure out what was going on, and we started triaging the victims. But it was absolutely amazing to watch the order that came out of that chaos with the military. I mean, you saw civilians and Marines and airmen and soldiers and Navy personnel who just instinctively knew that there was something that had to be done, that there was a very big job here that had to be done, that had to be accomplished. And the natural leaders just sort of came to the fore. And it was just absolutely amazing to watch, and it allowed people like Carl and I, who were tending to the victims, to fall into a support role with the doctors and other emergency technicians who had just come on the scene.
It is amazing, Carl, what the human condition can do under stress, right?
Yes, it is. Walking back to Dave's apartment, we walked about 6 miles, and we were just running on adrenaline. And as we were walking back, there was a point where we looked up, and on a building was the United States flag. It had not been at half-mast or half-staff. It was still flying high and free. And we said, that's what it's about. You know, our American resolve, the leadership we saw on the ground. We saw Secretary of Defense Rumsfeld on the grounds, and we looked up, and we were busy, but we knew that he was doing his assessment, and he was looking there to see, touching people, getting involved, so he could say, hey, this is the situation's under control.
Thank you both very much. David Thale and Carl Mencken, employees of Army Public Affairs, civilians at the Pentagon. Now to the security angle. By the way, if I would remind you again, Larry King Live will be with you every night, including Saturday and Sunday. as long as this takes. We now welcome James Woolsey. He is in our bureau in Washington, the former director of the CIA. He was the director from 93 through 95, and a return visit in Los Angeles with Brian Jenkins, terrorism expert, consultant to governments and private sector. James, was this a failure of your former agency?
Well, it was a failure of the whole U.S. government in a sense, because although we, both the Foreign Intelligence and the FBI, did a good job of stopping these terrorist incidents that were cooking up around the time of Y2K a year and a half ago. Anything like this that gets through, it's a failure of the CIA in detecting things that it might have been able to detect abroad, and it's a failure for the FBI in not having picked up things like terrorist cells in Boston, or the wrong people taking airline pilots training and the like. The system failed, clearly.
Brian, should we still be concerned?
We certainly should be concerned. I mean, we have a demonstration here where these people, perhaps 40, perhaps 50, were in this country up to 14, 15 months before, planning this operation, managing to do so without discovery. And therefore, that must lead us to the conclusion that potentially, this is not a prediction, but potentially, there are still cells somewhere in the world, perhaps somewhere in the United States, that are, as we speak, planning further terrorist attacks.
Isn't the problem, James, well-armed, well-financed terrorists, whether they be bin Laden or others, have the edge? They know what they're going to do, and in some cases are willing to die for what they're going to do. That's a tough enemy.
They have a substantial edge in an open society such as ours, and that's, of course, a big part of the problem, is that we have to fight them without losing our civil liberties. And they have a substantial edge once they get into the country, and can take advantage of all the freedom of movement and anonymity and all the rest that Americans crave as part of our freedoms. We are a very lucrative target in many ways for terrorists.
Now, Brian, is this twofold now? Is it prevention and get those who did it?
I think we have several things that we have to address. First of all, we have to address the immediate needs of the investigation, not only an investigation of who actually participated in the attack on September 11th, but any other cells that may be out there planning further attacks. That's a vital thing to do. Second, we have to ensure that we use this occasion to conduct a wholesale review of the security measures in effect at commercial aviation, in other places, in order not to permit this kind of a thing to occur again, while realistically understanding that we cannot prevent every terrorist attack. Number three, we have to certainly do whatever we can to bring those who are responsible for this to justice, whether in this country, where they will face our criminal justice system, if there are survivors to this thing, and abroad, whatever we need to do to reckon with them. And then finally, we have to demonstrate that this type of attack on the United States will not be productive, will not be tolerated.
Do we, somewhere along the line here, James, in your opinion, have to give up some of those civil liberties?
I certainly hope not. What we may have to give up is some time and some convenience. Air travel is certainly going to be a lot slower than it has been in the past, and perhaps more expensive. Congress today, the Minority Leader, Congressman Gephardt, said they were, of the House, said they were discussing the details of what types of national identification cards Americans should carry. We have always balked at that sort of thing that many other countries do before because of our concern about big government and the like. Some of those types of steps may be ones that are going to have to be taken. What we very much hope, of course, is that none of the fundamental rights are curtailed, and we have to keep that from happening. And Larry, let me add one point. You know, in the aftermath of Pearl Harbor, the United States did a terrible thing. It locked up the Nisei, the Japanese Americans, and the three men who were probably most responsible for that were Franklin Delano Roosevelt, Earl Warren, who was then running for governor of California, who was Attorney General, and Hugo Black, who was the Supreme Court Justice who wrote the decision that upheld the actions of putting the Nisei in the concentration camps. Probably the three greatest names in liberalism and civil liberties in 20th century America. So even people who care a lot about civil liberties can do awful things when the country gets scared, and we need to be cautious about that.
An important reminder. We're short on time, but Brian, are you pessimistic short term?
I wouldn't say pessimistic or optimistic. I would say realistic. We are about to enter a very perilous period. We've gone through a terrible tragedy. Our actions may well provoke further actions. Even without our actions, there may be further actions carried out against us. We have to be realistic.
What we're looking at now, by the way, as we thank James Woolsey and Brian Jenkins, are live pictures from the Pentagon. Live pictures tonight. Fire still burning. Before we meet the final guests during this special edition of Larry King Live, here's some more words from the President this morning.
I think about the families, the children. I'm a loving guy. And I'm also someone, however, who's got a job to do. And I intend to do it. And this is a terrible moment. But this country will not relent until we have saved ourselves and others from the terrible tragedy that came upon America.
Thank you. Thank you. And you're looking at more moments from the vigil tonight at Union Square in New York. We're going to end on an upbeat note, a good story. Joseph Berger and Teresa Grimmig join us. They are husband and wife. They are in Secaucus, New Jersey. Their young daughter, Isabel, and you see her right there, was separated from their caregiver after the home of where the caregiver was evacuated. For many hours, they had no idea where she was. How did you find her, Joseph?
We talked to most of our friends and asked them to call anyone they knew who could possibly help. And we're down at Payne Weber, and everyone did what they did best. They just made phone calls and networked, and all of a sudden we saw her name come across NBC saying, I probably shouldn't have mentioned it, but just saying that she was found and called this number, and it was a miracle as far as we're concerned.
Wow.
Just amazing.
Teresa, you work in Midtown, right?
Yes, at UBS Payne Weber.
Okay, and so Isabel stays with this lady Janet, right, in her place?
No, she stays with Isabel in our apartment in Battery Park City, right across the street from the World Trade Center.
I see. Janet comes to where you live.
Yes.
Okay, so Janet's with Isabel. Then they what, order evacuation?
Yes, they ask everyone. Janet was waiting in the lobby of our apartment building because she was nervous about what was going on. She was with her daughter, who had a cell phone with her, and was in touch with us that way. And then they were ordered to, they were asked to evacuate.
And how did Isabel get separated from Janet, Joseph?
Apparently what happened was as they were leaving the building, I think it was the first tower had collapsed. And when that had happened, there was tons of chaos, and everyone started running, and as the debris was coming towards them, I think Janet possibly may have stumbled or something, but a fireman grabbed Isabel to help. And at that moment, the debris came in, and Janet had told us that you couldn't see anything in front of you. It went from daylight to night, and when it cleared, she looked around, and Isabel was gone. She couldn't see Isabel, couldn't find the fireman, and she panicked. I mean, she just hysterically went to a police officer and told her what happened, and then she was forced on a boat to New Jersey.
How long was she missing, Teresa?
For 8 hours.
Good grief. And you can't go back to your house? Are you staying in Secaucus now? Is your house still closed?
No, we're staying with my brother Mark and his wife Lisa and their 3 sons in Summit. They're keeping us for the duration.
How did she hold up for 8 hours?
You know, we saw pictures of her with a rescue worker in Liberty State Park, and she seemed to be, she certainly seemed to be very well taken care of and fed, and no worse for wear at the end of the day.
But I guess prior to that, you you do what you have to do, and at one point, the business we're in, sometimes you're taught not to panic, but tell you a couple of times we just were ready to lose it, and you just keep making phone calls and keep trying till you find something out.
What a great break, and I thank God to both of you, and great luck for you.
Thank you
very much. Thank
and
you.
It's good to have you with us, Isabel. Your first major television appearance. Hang tough.
Yeah,
Say goodnight, Isabel.
Say bye-bye.
Say bye-bye, Isabel.
Bye-bye. No, Isabel is a little shy. Thank you. We'll be with you again, of course, tomorrow night. And stay tuned for a CNN special report anchored by Aaron Brown, the newest and one of the fine members of our CNN team here. As we leave you, here are shots of the Pentagon right now. Portions of the Pentagon still burning. I'm Larry King. See you tomorrow night. Stay tuned for Aaron Brown. Good night.
This is a CNN special report. America under attack. Hanging on to hope at Ground Zero.
If anybody has seen my brother, please give us a call.
Looking for my older nephew. He's 28 years old. He was on the top floor on the first hitting.
Families of the victims gather in grief. What does the United States do next?
It's a new kind of war.
But a war against whom?
Candidate who resides in that region. Were you speaking of Osama bin Laden?
Yes.
U.S. skies reopen. But as Americans try to return to normal, will normal ever be the same?
Looks like they are now evacuating the House of Representatives.
And standing strong in America, joining hands and hearts in the heartland. This is a CNN special report. America under attack. From New York, here's Aaron Brown.
Good evening again. It is now more than 60 hours since the massive and devastating terrorist attack hit this city and Washington, D.C. Surely these are the longest 60 hours in American life. It feels more like 60 days. But in these hours, we have seen our national landscape change dramatically, New York's landscape change permanently, and who can measure how our hearts, our sense of well-being has been altered as well. There is much to report in the next 2 hours. We will take you through the day and the night where things are now, the events that have taken place all day long, and we will look ahead at how the government may strike back and whether that strike, whatever it turns out to be, will have the desired end, and end not just to the people who committed this atrocity, but to terrorism itself. Here are the latest developments tonight. The Justice Department has identified 18 alleged hijackers. Secretary of State Colin Powell points the finger of blame directly at Osama bin Laden. A flight data recorder has been recovered from United Airlines Flight 93, which crashed in Pennsylvania. The FAA cleared some airports to open, and one person was arrested at New York's JFK Airport for having a false identification indicating that he was a pilot. But we begin first at the Pentagon. Another fire is burning there. We suspect this is a residual fire of what had been going on before. You can see the firefighters at the scene pouring water on the building that was damaged when the plane hit it Tuesday morning, and so many people perished. Again, this fire going on now at the Pentagon. We are not precisely sure of the source. They have been fighting the fire at the Pentagon really for 60 hours, and they continue to fight it still. This going on now in Washington, D.C. As we go along on the streets of Lower Manhattan tonight, as surely you know, the search goes on. It is a search that's being hampered by unstable buildings and by a fast-moving thunderstorm that is heading towards New York City. The faces of evil. Investigators believe they have identified the people who carried out the terror, but the search for those who helped them goes on tonight. And in Washington, the State Department all but says it was Osama bin Laden who backed the attack. So what do you do next? How do you catch? How do you punish a terrorist? And we will spend some time tonight looking at the country itself, its slow struggle to return to normal or to find some sort of new normal. there is a lot of ground for us to cover together. We are inside this evening, off the roof that has been our home for these long days because of the bad weather that is heading to New York. Heavy rains, high winds expected to hit, adding one more miserable element to the problems rescue teams face as they desperately try to find survivors. CNN's Gary Tuchman begins our coverage tonight from the streets near what just 60 hours ago were the magnificent towers of the World Trade Center. Gary?
Good evening to you, Aaron. Small fires continue to burn. Smelly, smoky clouds continue to drift over lower Manhattan. And more than 1,000 rescue workers continue to try to look for survivors. But the rains are coming. They're expected to be heavy tonight, and that will present major problems. I can't tell you enough how widespread the damage is at the site. The rubble of the World Trade Center complex looks like a mountain range. At some points, it's 75 feet tall. The streets in the surrounding area look like the Blitz from World War II. There are 3 buildings surrounding the World Trade Center complex, which are said to be structurally unsound. There are fears of the possibility of collapse, and that's making the search much more difficult. 150 to 200 other stores and businesses that aren't part of the World Trade Center complex are also destroyed or damaged. Now, there is also debris everywhere. One of New York City's oldest churches, St. Paul's Chapel. It's a chapel and also an old cemetery. There is debris, refuse, rubble all over the church. Now, no survivors have been found today. We are looking right now inside the World Trade Center complex towers. This was video shot by a passerby with a video camera today. And you are looking at the deep hole right there, what workers have to contend with on the scene. It's very emotional for many of these people who've been there. For the 4,000 or 5,000 people total, there's about 1,500 at a time, but 4,000 or 5,000 people total who've been there say they've never seen anything like it and hope they never see anything like this again. There was some celebrating earlier today. 5 firefighters, according to police and hospital officials, were rescued from the rubble. But as it turned out, these were not firefighters who were there since the collapse of these buildings. These were firefighters who fell in the rubble earlier today. When they came out, it was assumed by many of the people on the scene that they were in there since Tuesday. As it turned out, they were just recovered from slipping through earlier today. That in itself is good news, but the fact is no survivors from this terrorist incident have been found today, and that's the bad news. But there are rescue workers on the scene who we've been talking to who are still convinced that there are people buried alive.
It's really frustrating because you just want to go in there and start tearing things out, ripping them sheet metal. The sheet metal workers are doing it, the steel workers are in there, the pipe fitters, everybody, engineers, Con Ed, I mean, just everybody. And it's frustrating because you have to stop. You hear whistles, signals for you to stop because they think they hear a sound, a movement. They'll stop. I mean, total silence. And, you know, and it might be false alarm, or if it is, you have to, people are so buried down there, you have no idea.
That rescue worker, Joseph Lopez, told us that he found parts from the United and American Airlines planes that crashed into the World Trade Center. He says he turned over those parts to the FBI. He also says he found a Raggedy Ann doll. And he says that find broke his heart. Aaron, back to you.
Well, I just let these pictures go a bit for as long as they do. That is certainly the first best look we have had at what that all looks like, and that is just that is remarkable, stunning stuff, isn't it? I mean, these office buildings, and then you get to those outside shots. I mean, you got to remember there were 50,000 people coming to work, and their buildings blew up under them and then collapsed. And look at that shot down to that. My goodness. My goodness. At the other end of that search, there are tonight hundreds of scared and desperate people hoping that a missing loved one somewhere in that wreckage is still alive. It's hard when you look at to imagine it. 4,500 people listed as missing. More than that. Many of their family members have come to an armory in New York City looking for help. That's where Elizabeth Cohen spent a very difficult and emotional day and joins us again tonight. Elizabeth.
Aaron, we are still here. They are staying open all night, 24 hours here at the Armory on 26th and Lexington in New York, where families are coming to register information to find out about their loved ones, to find out if they are on a list of people who are in hospitals or a list of people who are dead. If you look, you also can see there's an impromptu prayer group going on. That is what that circle of people is. Like everything here, it is completely spontaneous. Someone said we are a band of brothers and sisters here today, all hoping for the same thing, hoping that our loved ones are among the ones who are still alive. They have been hearing reports that people have been pulled out alive, and they are hoping that theirs will be one of them, or perhaps they're one of the John or Jane Does who are in the hospital. One woman said, I could just hope that she's in a coma, so that's why she hasn't called me. Those are the hopes that people are feeling today as they register information, as they bring in dental records about their loved ones. We are here with a woman who is looking for her best friend. The woman who we're here with is Becky Lothan. She's looking for her best friend, Julie Geis. Now, tell me about the last time you heard from Julie.
Julie and I flew into New York on Monday. Tuesday morning, she went to work in the World Trade Center. About 10 minutes to 9, she called me to let me know that she wasn't in the building. That was the first building that was hit by an airplane, but she saw that airplane fly into the building. She wanted to reassure me that she was okay. And at that time, I didn't have the television on, so I turned the television on and said goodbye, and about 10 minutes later, her building was hit.
So tell me again what you talked to her between the two explosions. Right. Tell me again what she said to you.
She said, I want you to know that I'm okay. I saw the plane hit the building. She thought it was an accident. And she said, I just called to let you know I'm all right. And that was the end of that. That was the end of the conversation. And I turned the television on, and then about 10 minutes later, her building was hit.
Can you hold up the picture of Julie for us?
Sure. This is a picture of Julie. Julie's an Aon employee, and we're from Kansas City, and I came up with her, and we were going to go to a Yankee game and a Broadway show. Julie's originally from Nebraska. She has 7 brothers and sisters and a mother and father. If you see or know anything about Julie, please call this number.
So you were both from Kansas City.
Yes.
She was here on business.
Yes.
Can you tell me, when you went into the Armory, was it organized? Were people sympathetic?
It was very wonderful. It was more than I ever expected. It was a lot of people, but it was very organized, and people were very helpful. They had food and water, Cokes, anything you would want. They were very, very nice.
You said it changed your opinion of New Yorkers.
Yes, it did. The last time I was in New York, it wasn't really like that.
Hold up the picture of Julie still, because we want to make sure that she's seen. Tell me about the trip that the two of you.
In January, Julie and I are going to Hawaii for a couple weeks. So that'd be a nice thing for her to tell people when she gets out of this mess, that, you know, that she was here. There'd be something to talk about. I've Aon Online, the company she works for, has been very helpful. They keep me updated. Everybody in New York, I've talked to the police department several times, and people couldn't be nicer.
Tell me about Julie. We can see from the picture how beautiful she is. Yes. Tell me what she was like inside.
Julie was president of a nonprofit charity organization in Kansas City called Voice. It was Women with One Voice. She gave a lot to charity. She was on a lot of different boards. That's the kind of person she was. Unfortunately, Julie would have probably been the last person to leave her floor. She would have made sure everybody else was out before she was out. She's a very strong and tough woman, and if anybody could come through this, it would be Julie. So I have a lot of hope that she's going to be okay.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Continue your search for Julie.
This is the number. If you see Julie, please call this number.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's talk now. There are 2 young women here who are looking for fireman Bob Cordice. You are his girlfriend. Tell me about what you've been through today.
Well, for the past 2 days, it's been really hectic. I work in Jersey, so on Tuesday I was stuck there. I had no phone service. I couldn't get out to anybody. I was trying everywhere, hotlines, hospitals. I couldn't get through. And yesterday I made it home at around 12 o'clock, and we've just been waiting for someone to call. I've been speaking with his mother, and we've just been waiting for somebody to call for us.
And tell me about, he was a fireman. Yes. He took risks all the time, didn't he?
He just got transferred to Squad 1 in Brooklyn, and from my recollection, he was one of the first firefighters there. So I didn't hear from him Tuesday morning. I know I spoke to him Monday night, and he had told me that he was going in Tuesday morning, so I'm just waiting for him to come home.
Thank you. Thank you. Tell me what he was like.
He was a very, very strong man. He loves what he does, and he also worked in a bar, and he was very outgoing, and he had a lot of friends, and we're just waiting for him to come home.
Thank you. Thank you. Aaron, these are the stories that we have been hearing all day here outside the Armory. These are people who are hoping. I haven't spoken to anyone who has said, I've lost hope. Everyone says that they know deep inside that their loved one is still alive. And some of the posters, for example, say a mole on this side of the face or the exact color of hair, because they're hoping that if someone sees them, that hopefully they'll report that to authorities. And ordinary citizens have been so helpful here. I just talked to a gentleman who came down here just to look at all the pictures that are posted on the walls, because he said maybe I would know someone. Other people have walked this line. People are waiting for hours, and ordinary citizens are coming and saying, let me stand in line for you. I'll hold your place. I'm sure you have many things to do. Perhaps you need to sit down and take a break. And they held their place in line. These are people who just did this of their own accord. I spoke earlier today with a man named Vinny Carmage, who was looking for his father, Rocco. And I have here with me Vinny Carmage, whose father, Rocco, was in the World Trade Center. And can you tell me where he worked and when your family last heard from him?
My father was a window washer on Tower 2, the observation deck. He worked the rig outside. He last called us at 9:15 a.m. from the 105th floor, where he said there was 200 to 300 people just on that floor waiting for them to be told to head down.
And did he say that he was heading down, or did he feel safe?
He said, don't panic, to my mom. He said, don't get upset. Tell my kids I'm going to be okay, not to worry about it. I'm in God's hands. We're all going to be okay, don't worry.
And tell me why today you're distributing these flyers.
This morning, my mom woke me up early telling me that his name was on one of the survivor lists on an internet web's page, and that we can get the best information from the building behind us, the Armory.
And what happened when you went into the Armory here?
I have a case number. I looked it up to see if my dad was in any of these hospitals, and no luck yet.
What's in your head now about what you think happened?
I don't know. I know that my father, he wouldn't have just left everyone behind. He would have looked for his workers. He would have helped people out. He did it on the 90th when they bombed it in '93. He helped a pregnant woman down the stairs.
So he was in the building in '93?
Yes, he was. He's been working there since 1973.
Was he scared to go back and work in that building after the '93 bombing?
My father went back the next day. They asked him, because they needed to inspect the outside of the building, and my father knew how to operate the rig, so he brought down all the workers to inspect the building.
If you think your father might be out there somewhere, what would you want to say to him?
I want to tell him that we all miss him. His little nephew, Luke, misses him. And that we're strong. We got hope.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Aaron, I've been talking to these families for 2 days now, and all of these stories are very much like this. People are just hoping that their relatives are out there somewhere, and they're begging us to talk about them, to show their pictures, hoping that if someone's seen them, that they might be able to identify them and give some information. Aaron, I've met so many people here like Vinnie Carmage today and in other places yesterday where families were registering information. And all I can say is that these people have superhuman strength, that they are able to get it all together, come down here, fill out 10-page forms about their loved ones, and they are walking, they are traipsing the streets of Manhattan looking for anyone who has information about the person that they love. Aaron?
Elizabeth, we are trained to be dispassionate, but we are not expected to be inhuman. You did terrific work today. I can only imagine how difficult it has been. Thank you for your efforts. Thank you. CNN's Elizabeth Cohen. The toughest, absolutely the toughest conversations, the interviews we've had to do are with people who are waiting, and they continue to wait. And to spend 2 days doing that is, it's tough work, guys. I was asked by a reporter the other day how this was affecting me, and I told them that every time I closed my eyes, I kept seeing the image of that plane hitting the second tower. It is an image burned in my brain, and I suspect many of yours as well. None of the thousands of words that we've spoken are as powerful as that image. The images of this story are the pain, and oddly enough, they are also the promise that the pain will pass. Here's CNN's Beth Nissen.
A single image can have such power. This one photograph helped a stunned nation grasp what had happened after the Oklahoma City bombing. There is not yet a single iconic image to help a stunned world comprehend the human cost of Tuesday's attack. Most of the images are at remove, heavy machinery clawing at rubble, closed trucks carrying bodies to the morgue. Headlines and news reports are starting to number the dead, but most of those lost are still shrouded without a name or face.
You can say hundreds of people died, and if you see one image of one man holding one dead person, it's a different kind of information because it's more personal.
For so many, this one image personalized the human loss in New York this week. They looked at this picture and knew that there were thousands of souls like this one dark-haired man, thousands who went to work Tuesday morning and were dead just hours later. Many family members of those lost in other terrorist attacks say such graphic images are vitally important psychologically. One of those lost in the bombing of Pan Am 103 over Lockerbie, Scotland, was J.P. Flynn, the brother of Brian Flynn.
It does start to make it sink in when all of a sudden it becomes less this thing on TV and more about, oh my God, there's J.P. He is gone.
Many psychologists say vivid images of tragedies such as the Oklahoma City bombing can help people move past disbelief and toward grief, a grief that will slowly give way to acceptance, however painful it is, that allows them to go on with life, however altered it is. Yet researchers on traumatic stress caution that graphic images of death, especially those televised without warning, are not therapeutic for everyone.
They may be re-traumatized by an image. Information is a double-edged sword. How much information is too much information?
And as traumatic as the sight of a human corpse is, the sight of a dismembered one is immeasurably worse. One of the reasons there are so few pictures of individual victims at Ground Zero is that so few individual bodies are intact. Those working in the debris say the scene is a horror.
You bend down and you pull up a shoe, there's a foot inside. There might be an arm laying next to it. You know, I've never seen nothing like it. Never in my life. You know, only in the movies. And this is real life what I'm talking about.
Day 3, the full picture of all that happened is still developing and may always be in thousands of pieces. Beth Nissen, CNN, New York.
A first look at the New York story today. The investigation into all of this moves forward, and it moves forward at a fairly rapid pace, and we've learned just in the last few minutes of a development we want to get to you right now. CNN's Kelly Arena, who covers the Justice Department, joins us now. There was an incident at JFK, I guess it was late this afternoon, wasn't it, Kelly, where some people were detained. Fill in some blanks on this, because this is getting more fulsome almost by the minute.
Very disturbing, Aaron, very disturbing developments, actually at both JFK and LaGuardia airports. law enforcement sources tell CNN that at least 8 people have been arrested for various issues, including fake documentation, some INS violations. One was even caught carrying a fake pilot's license. 4 of the individuals, and this is where it gets interesting, 4 of the individuals were actually seen at a New York City airport on the day of the terrorist attacks. They were passengers with tickets. They went to the ticket counter. They were challenged, we are told, at the ticket counter and bolted from the airport, ran away. They have resurfaced. They came back today again to JFK. They are now in custody. As to whether or not this was another hijacking attempt, one U.S. official tells CNN, certainly this is being looked at, that a hijacking was thwarted. There is concern in our office that this may have been another attempt. So, Aaron, the bottom line here, 8 people, at least 8 people in custody, being questioned by FBI members of the Joint Terrorism Task Force. Back to you.
That is remarkable, because you have to think of the brazenness of that. If these people were involved in that, and on the day the airports reopen, try and get on an airplane and get out of Dodge, that's incredible. If that's what it turns out to be.
Absolutely.
Kelly, thanks. Nice piece of reporting. Thank you. This investigation, as we say, moves forward. The Justice Department says it now believes 18 people in total were responsible for the 4 hijackings on Tuesday. CNN's national correspondent Mike Betcher joins us now from Atlanta with the latest on the investigation, and there is a lot happening.
Well, indeed, Aaron. As we just heard, a total of 8 arrested at New York airports. That one person carrying that fake pilot's identification. We know 4 or 5 other people who were trying to check in for flights were arrested at Kennedy. And investigators around the country are trying to make sense of what exactly is going on. Are these people part of a continued conspiracy, part of a ongoing conspiracy, part of the past conspiracy that brought down those 4 jetliners? It's a very difficult situation, as 4,000 agents are spread across the country knocking on hundreds of doors. And before it's all over, Aaron, they're going to have to knock on tens of thousands of more doors trying to get to the bottom of the conspiracy. We're told that the investigation being conducted overseas by intelligence officials is bearing some fruit as they are looking across the Atlantic in search of the identity of the group that these people perhaps belong to. So it's a very difficult investigation, but as we said, the main thing tonight are those people arrested at Kennedy Airport.
At New York's LaGuardia Airport, police detained at least 2 other men for questioning. After the spate of arrests and detentions, all New York area airports were closed again. A few other airports in the U.S. have also shut down once more because of security concerns. Attorney General John Ashcroft said FBI agents are making progress in their investigation, adding that they have identified the hijackers aboard all 4 ill-fated jets.
The total number of hijackers, to our best estimate and our best knowledge, given the information at this time, on the 4 planes that crashed was at least 18, unless contradicted by evidence which we wouldn't anticipate. 2 planes had 5 hijackers and 2 other planes had 4 hijackers each.
Mohammed Atta, shown in this photograph, and Marwan al-Shari are 2 of the men on that list of 18, according to federal investigative sources. Both held United Arab Emirate passports, but it's not clear if they are actually citizens of that country. The lives the 2 men led are the objects of an intensive international investigation, stretching from Florida to Germany. In Hamburg, Germany, federal police launched an extensive search of an apartment shared by Mohammed Atta and Marwan al-Shari last February. During an additional search of another Hamburg apartment, a woman was taken away for questioning. She clutched a baby in her arms as German police tried to hide her with a sheet. During the night, a total of 8 apartments were searched in the Hamburg area. Back in the U.S. in Pompano Beach, Florida, FBI agents converged on a small rental car company called Warwick.
Across the country, several several people have been detained by federal investigators as they search for leads in this case, but many of those people have been arrested, and right now we're trying to get a fix for you how many people are still in detention and where the fruits of those leads are taking federal agents. Aaron?
Mike, just a couple of quick things, I think. We use the term arrested, and then we say they're being detained, and I get, perfectly honest, I'm a bit confused which it is.
Okay.
Are they, in fact, have been arrested? Are they charged with anything?
Because they're not charged with anything, but because we try to give you the most updated information, that information from Kelly Arena came just as she got it, and she presented it to you. When this spot was put together just shortly before that, all we knew is they were detained. Now they're using the word arrested for fake documentation, I am told, and of course we have that one pilot, or the person with the fake pilot ID, Aaron.
And over the last several days, there have been a number of people who have been detained, held as material witnesses, and the like. In some cases, these were immigration violations. I think they were being held on. Is it your sense that this is sort of a charge of convenience? It allows the government to hang on to these people until they can figure out if, in fact, they have any relationship to this?
Well, in some cases it is, but they are obligated under the law to place those people in detention under those INS laws if they're found to be in the country illegally. But in cases where they think they have someone who is a good lead, they will use that, and it's been done before, Aaron.
Mike, thanks. Mike Betcher in Atlanta is working the investigative side of this. We have more on that, but we need to quickly go to our senior White House correspondent, John King, because there is yet another breaking development there. John?
Well, Aaron, I wish we could tell you exactly what we have before us, but this has been a very confusing day here. We have had the security perimeter stretched out beyond the White House yet again, and just a few moments ago, out of the old Executive Office building, and we can show you a picture of it, came some Secret Service personnel. That is a robotic vehicle that is part of the Secret Service bomb squad. Now, it has sat inside the gates since it came out a few moments ago, so we're not trying to alarm anybody here, but this on a day in which the White House reestablished a much wider security perimeter around the White House. For the past several hours, a helicopter with a searchlight has been flying over the premises, shining down a searchlight on the streets around the White House. That vehicle just 45, 50 yards from me through a fence between the White House and the old Executive Office building. And again, we don't want to get anyone out of control here. It came out. The officers are still sitting there, but yet again another sign of the extraordinary stepped-up security around the White House tonight. This on a day in which we saw the president out in public trying to reassure the American people. Tomorrow he will attend a national prayer service, ask the nation to pause for a moment of silence. That part of the president's effort to get the country to look forward in a more reassuring mode, but the developments around here today a signal that this crisis will go on for some time to come.
The president choked up as he discussed the enormity of the challenge ahead.
I think about the families, the children. I'm a loving guy, and I'm also someone, however, who's got a job to do, and I intend to do it.
2 days after the attacks, discussions with top security advisors include talk of retaliatory strikes, followed by a sustained international diplomatic and financial crackdown against suspected terrorists and their supporters.
Now's an opportunity to do generations a favor by coming together and whipping terrorism, hunting it down, finding it, and holding them accountable. The nation must understand this is now the focus of my administration.
Sources say military planners are discussing options for retaliating against the lead suspect, Saudi terrorist Osama bin Laden. But one senior official said the administration was waiting to act because, quote, there might be not one but multiple organizations involved in this. Another served notice that when the administration does act, it will not be a one-time affair.
You don't do it with just a single military strike, no matter how dramatic. You don't do it with just military forces alone. You do it with the full resources of the U.S. government. It will be a campaign, not a single action.
The President and First Lady took time to visit some of those injured in the attack on the Pentagon. And Mr. Bush called Governor George Pataki and Mayor Rudy Giuliani to announce he will travel to New York on Friday to get a first-hand look at the worst of the devastation. But this interfered with the White House effort to project a reassuring image. The security perimeter around the White House suddenly expanded because of new concerns of a terrorist attack. Vice President Cheney left the White House and was rushed to the Camp David presidential retreat so that he and the president would not be at the same location.
Now, these new and constantly changing security precautions here at the White House, part of what one of the president's closest advisors called, quote, a transforming event for us and for the country. And, Aaron, what the president himself labeled earlier today, the first war of the 21st century.
Well, you have this, whatever this is going on the White House grounds now with the suspicions. You have the Capitol evacuated late this afternoon, early this evening. You have a city that is absolutely on edge, where everything is taken seriously. There's very similar scenes in New York going on. How does the president, how does the White House, how does anyone in Washington suggest to the American people that things are getting back to normal?
That is an enormous challenge, Aaron, and they recognize that here at the White House. The president himself has personally tried to script the prayer service that will be held when he is in New York tomorrow, trying to offer reassuring signals to the public. But every time the White House tries to cast a more reassuring image, we have a recurrence of events like this. I want to emphasize, we see the robot from the bomb squad out here on the facilities, but still people, reporters, anyone with a White House pass, free to come and go. So obviously not a crisis atmosphere, but you're right. The president, on the one hand, offering reassuring words today. Hours later, they say National Airport will be closed indefinitely because of its proximity to the White House and the Pentagon. A very tough challenge for this president, not only in the days ahead, but they know it here at the White House in the weeks and months ahead as well.
I expect they do. John, thanks. Senior White House correspondent John King. Secretary of State today, by the way, was not mincing any words at all. He was pointing fingers and demanding cooperation. There was none of the nuance that one usually sees in the business of diplomacy. Andrea Koppel covers the State Department. She joins us now. It was quite a remarkable briefing, wasn't it, in that way?
It certainly was, Aaron, as you say, quite unusual for folks in this building. But that wasn't the only thing unusual that happened today on the diplomatic front, certainly when you consider the very delicate way, the very careful way the U.S. has been dealing with getting information from the Yemeni government. That was the last attack against Americans last year, the USS Cole in Yemen. Now fast forward 48 hours to the very public way that the folks in this building have been dealing with the government of Pakistan.
Tightening the diplomatic screws on Pakistan's president, the Bush administration presented a list of specific steps it says Pakistan must take. Among them, to share information on what it knows about Tuesday's attacks and Osama bin Laden's terrorist network, to close the border between Pakistan and Afghanistan and cut off fuel shipments, and eventually to provide the United States with use of Pakistani airspace if needed.
We haven't yet publicly identified the organization we believe was responsible. But when you look at the list of candidates, one resides in that region.
Later, when pressed by reporters,
when you spoke of a candidate who resides in that region, were you speaking of Osama bin Laden?
Yes.
For the first time, Powell saying publicly what many have said privately, that bin Laden's network, based in Afghanistan, is a prime suspect. And as Afghanistan's neighbor and longtime supporter, Pakistan could play a critical role in finding bin Laden and shutting down his terrorist training camps for good. Following another full day of intense meetings and conversations between U.S. and Pakistani officials, President Musharraf assured the Bush administration of Pakistan's unstinted cooperation in the fight against terrorism. He said Pakistan is ready to commit all of its resources to locate and punish those responsible for the attacks in New York and Washington.
President Musharraf is in a difficult position. He has aided the Taliban for a number of years. But also he needs the United States very badly right now. We are improving our relations with India. He can't afford, I think, to antagonize the United States.
State Department officials say early indications from Pakistan are, quote, very positive.
Still, Secretary of State Powell acknowledged that with economic sanctions in place, the U.S. has very little leverage to turn up the heat. But Powell also said that the U.S. could make life a lot easier for Pakistan, Aaron, if that government cooperates.
Andrea, help me with this a little bit, because after these incidents, and I don't care where they happen, governments always condemn them and they say they're terrible and they're not going to allow it to go on. And then it goes on and on again, and it's the same players. So why does what Pakistan says now, why should it be seen in any different way if in fact it should be?
Well, certainly you're absolutely right to say that it's one thing to say something rhetorically, it's another thing to back that with action. And the U.S. is by no means saying that they are writing the end of this chapter right now. What they are saying is that they're hearing things publicly and privately from General Musharraf and other Pakistani officials that are encouraging. Now, they'll see whether or not they're backed with action.
So it's private things we'd like to hear, I guess. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you for your work today. From the State Department, we move on to the Pentagon. Think about this, thousands of reserves could be called to action in the wake of the incidents on Tuesday, that tragedy, to relieve the National Guard troops who are now on air patrol over the United States. The President has to make that decision. Our military affairs correspondent, Jamie McIntyre, has more. He joins us tonight from the Pentagon. Jamie, good evening.
Well, Pentagon officials are trying to make two things perfectly clear. One is it is the President's decision. It's not a Pentagon decision. And two, that decision has not yet been made. Nevertheless, Pentagon sources are telling us that the Bush administration is considering calling up thousands of reservists to bolster the U.S. military strength. Some of those would be used to fly and service the combat air patrols and some of the planes that are on strip alert around the country. Now, Secretary Rumsfeld canceled the the fighter jet flights over most metropolitan areas, but he's left the planes flying in the New York to Washington corridor for now. In addition, at 26 bases across the United States, fighter planes are on 15-minute strip alert. That means the pilots have to be nearby and ready to take off within 15 minutes in case there was a threat to the United States. Now, those planes are flown by Air National Guard and National Guard troops, and they've been at it for a day or so now, 2 days now, and the Pentagon is looking at how they might give them some relief by calling up some of the reserves. They also might use some of these troops to just to bolster the efforts at disaster relief as well.
Have you heard anything from the other side of town, from over at the White House, that gives you any reason one way or another to know what the President will do or when the President might do it?
Well, I think a lot depends on, A, if they decide to continue to keep these fighter jets on alert, keeping ships at sea. I mean, that is designed to make sure the United States is protected and also to reassure the American public, but frankly, it's somewhat symbolic, so they might want to stand that down. If they do carry out this campaign, this broader campaign that the United States keeps talking about against terrorism, then that will require reservists. The way the U.S. military is organized these days, no major military action can be done without reservists who have specialties in particular areas. That's basically the way the war plan works.
And and I assume that's because as the military has gotten smaller, right? I mean, the military is just smaller
Absolutely
than
right.
it once was.
Yeah, as they did that, the plants now rely on reservists for all kinds of things: doctors, air traffic controllers, logisticians. Of course, reservists are people who have regular jobs. They're civilians the rest of the time. But under law, the President can call them into service for up to 2 years, and he has the authority to call up to 1 million reservists. The last time this was done was in the Persian Gulf War. 265,000 troops were called up for the Persian Gulf War in 1991, those reservists serving in the Persian Gulf War.
And just quickly, do you have any idea how many people we're talking about here that might be called up, or where those people are?
Well, there could be, it would be thousands of troops. I'm not sure if it would be several thousand or up to tens of thousands, and they'd be all over the country.
So there's no particular units that, ultimately there would be particular units, but at least that we're hearing now that might be involved in this.
It could be spread all over the country.
Okay, Jamie, thanks. Jamie McIntyre at the Pentagon this evening updating that. That would be a very expensive proposition and would just add to the price tag of what is already an extraordinarily expensive tragedy. And I don't honestly believe, though we hear numbers, 20 billion, 30 billion, anyone really knows. We're about 43 minutes past 10 o'clock Eastern Time. For those of you who might just be joining us, we'd like to update you briefly on where we have been tonight. As Jamie McIntyre just reported, President Bush is considering activating some military reserve units for the first time since the Persian Gulf War. They would be used to assist in emergency response efforts. Congress has already agreed to double the $20 billion the White House has requested to pay for the recovery and the disaster relief area, so that's moving through the Congress now. The three major New York City airports were closed again tonight after several security-related incidents, including the arrest of a person reportedly carrying a fake pilot's ID. And Kelly Arena at the Justice Department reports that it may be that these people tried to board planes on Tuesday, may have been part of the broader conspiracy. In any case, they're in custody and they are being aggressively investigated tonight. And also, Northwest Airlines abruptly canceled a few flights it had scheduled tonight, saying it had information indicating it was not safe to fly. President Bush has declared Friday a national day of prayer and remembrance. Mr. Bush is scheduled to attend a prayer service here in New York City tomorrow. And a brief update of where we have been in the first 44 minutes tonight. We've got an hour and 15 minutes to go. We want to go back to the airlines. There's the country, I think all of us are struggling to get back to normal, and at the nation's airports, finding normal was not easy, not for the airlines themselves, not for the people who run the airports, and not for the passengers, as the new rules that have rapidly been put in effect have slowed things down. Here's CNN's Patty Davis.
Security tight as most of the nation's airports reopened, but not Reagan National Airport, where continuing concerns about flights near the Pentagon and White House kept it closed. Massive snowblowers parked to protect the control tower from a terrorist attack. At Washington Dulles Airport, passengers forced to dump razor blades, even knitting needles, anything like the knives terrorists used in Tuesday's hijackings. The terrorist attacks in New York and Washington not stopping some from returning to the skies.
I kind of, afraid of the airplane, but more than that, I just, want to go home.
I'm confident that security precautions are in place, and despite what's happened, life has to go on.
The Federal Aviation Administration ordered airlines and airports to beef up security, including a complete search of planes and terminals before they could open for business. No curbside check-in, no off-airport check-in, no more knives and carry-on luggage, boarding areas restricted to passengers.
And in times such as these, we will use all available resources to ensure the safety of our travelers.
The Transportation Secretary even talking about using the military's elite Delta Force commandos on planes to help armed federal air marshals stop hijackers. Airlines were warning passengers to arrive as much as 2 hours in advance.
The old days where you could get to the airport at the last minute and run through to the counter and the gate and get on the airplane, those days are gone.
1,200 flights had flown by mid-afternoon all across the country, from Los Angeles to Atlanta. The FAA giving the go-ahead to commercial and charter flights, but not to private planes or any overseas carriers for now. Analysts estimate airlines lost billions of dollars while grounded at a time when airlines are struggling financially.
Our highest priority is to restore the confidence of our passengers in this system. That is going to require patience on the part of our customers, but we also need to restore commerce in America.
The question now, will passengers return? Patty Davis, CNN, Washington.
Almost immediately after the attacks, Arab Americans across the country, this is disturbing and it's not surprising, began feeling the backlash from it all. In North Texas, a mosque was damaged in an apparent firebombing attack. No one inside at the time. It was the third mosque attack since Tuesday. In San Francisco, blood was poured on the sidewalk of an Islamic community center, San Francisco. In Chicago, hundreds of people, many waving American flags, were held back by police as they tried to march to a mosque. And all over the United States, Arab Americans say they are tonight living in fear.
I'm blown away because I'd expect that people realize that this is not American. This is completely un-American.
Not left untouched, Arab American children who, as you can imagine, like all children, they're in a somewhat different situation, trying to understand why people are so angry at them. James.
I am afraid that they might start being mean to Muslims like they did 200 years ago to black people. I'm just going to try to show that I'm kind and I'm innocent and I'm just a good person.
Been situations like that in New York City as well. Dr. James Zogby is in Washington. He's the founder and president of the Arab American Institute, a Washington-based organization that serves as a political and policy research arm of the Arab American community. And he joins us now. Dr. Zogby, good evening. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Aaron.
It's hard, in a sense, to know what to ask. I mean, I said at the beginning, it is very disturbing. It is not surprising. We saw similar things, didn't we, after Oklahoma City?
Yeah, we did, and we expected it, and like you, we weren't surprised, but we were afraid. And there's a double tragedy in all of this for my community because we were mourning and grieving like the rest of America. I have Arab Americans in the World Trade Center building and Arab Americans in the Pentagon, and there are Arab American policemen and firefighters in New York right now working at that site. And yet, we were taken from our mourning and had to be afraid. I got horrific death threats at my office, as did others in this town, and there were actual acts of violence, as you've reported. And so it became a very difficult situation as we got pulled away from the body politic that we're a part of as American citizens and had to somehow be looking over our shoulder. But I want to tell you that there's a good story here, a good news item from today. 24 hours after the threats came, today we had an incredible outpouring of support from the President and the Attorney General and the Secretary of State to senators who called me. Senator Kennedy, and I talked to Joe Lieberman, and Senator Harkin passed a resolution, a unanimous resolution in the Senate. Senator Edwards and Senator Stabenow all called to say we want to support you, as did a dozen or so ethnic American organizations from Portuguese and Italian and Irish and Hispanic. And then just our neighbors and friends. The local police department came by and has offered us protection. And even the office next door to us, Street Law, is making lunches for people on my staff because they know they're afraid to go out. And so it's almost like we got torn away from our grief, but now America has come to embrace us to say, you can go back, you're a part of us, and you can grieve with the rest of us. And it's been a very, very heartwarming day. We know that there's going to be tough days ahead, but there's been some good in all of this as well, as difficult as it is to imagine.
Well, and that's nice to hear. As you were talking about, it struck me that we've talked before. You're a well-known person in Washington. You've moved in the circles of the Capitol for some time. People know you there. There's a difference between what official Washington says and does and sometimes what goes on in other parts of the country. How many Arab Americans are there?
There's about 3.5 million Arab Americans, and they are all over the country, and they're well established. Most of them are. They're the most vulnerable, of course, are the more recent immigrants. But I want to tell you, the Justice Department set up today a special project. We met with the Assistant Attorney General, Ralph Boyd. They've set up a special project on hate crimes. They're going to be actively pursuing those who threaten Arab Americans, because just as the terrorists can't win, and we as a people will be unified and will defeat them, we will not allow bigotry to win either, because then America won't be America anymore. And that's one thing that cannot come from this, is that we become divided as a people. And so I'm proud of the way my country's responded. I'm proud of the way my community has responded with blood drives and vigils and expressions of support for their fellow Americans everywhere. It has been a very difficult, a very painful time. It's not over. The scenes you showed tonight of people looking for closure that may never find it, that will be with us for a long time. And yet, in all of this, America finds a way to be the unique and embracing country that it is. And I think that that's important for all of us to remember.
Dr. Zogby, let me ask you one of those annoying questions. Take off your official's hat, your representative of an institution hat, and just tell me if when you heard of what happened in New York and Washington, if you didn't close your eyes and say, oh my God, I hope that was not an Arab who did it.
You know, I didn't. I know people who did, and I've heard stories of people in my community and my own family who felt that and prayed that it wouldn't because they knew what it would be. But I must tell you, from my perspective, I was just riveted as everyone else was with the horror of that scene. I've been to that building. We almost opened an office in that building because a friend of mine has an office there and was going to open a New York office for our institute there. I know that there are dozens of Arab American offices in that World Trade Center, and so I thought of the horror. Actually, what occurred to me was the people on that plane and the terror that they must have gone through as they knew that they were going to die, and only then afterwards, when the calls and the threats came, did I almost get jolted back to the unfortunate and ugly reality that some would accuse and point a finger, and realize then we had to issue statements and begin to talk about it in a different way. But I want to tell you, I want a message to my community as well. You're right, in small and isolated towns, there will be people who will do ugly and awful things. But there will be many more who will reach out and embrace Arab Americans, and I think that that's the important message of today. We can mourn with the rest of America because we are a part of America, and the fact is that we will work together as one country to defeat this scourge.
Dr. Zogby, it's good to talk to you again. It's been a while.
Thank you.
Wish you well, sir. Thank you.
Let's talk on better times.
In my business, it rarely seems to work that way, though, does it?
Okay, thanks.
We'll try. Thank you, sir.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Goodbye. James Zogby from Washington tonight. In London today, this was quite extraordinary. An emotional, unprecedented ceremony taking place at Buckingham Palace. A military band played the Star-Spangled Banner at a special changing of the guard. Of course, this was in honor of the victims of the terrorist attacks. Buckingham Palace today. In New York today, a New Yorker, former President Bill Clinton, lent his support to the relatives and friends of the missing, and this too, in its own way, was a rather extraordinary scene outside the Armory.
I have two children in the military. He's their dad. He was in on the first and 12th floor, first thing the other morning. His boy down in California, and we need to know where he is.
Thank you for your service.
Does this touch you personally?
They're still fighting people. Don't lose hope.
Thank you very much.
Still fighting. This lady came up to me and she said, "This is my husband. He's missing. He was in the Marine Corps, and two of our sons are in the military. You commanded them, and I want my husband back."
let us know where him and his co-workers may be.
If you were president, what you will do now?
The important thing is that I'm not president. I'm a citizen, and I'm going to support the president. That's what I want every American to do. They know what they have to do. They have to find the facts, and they have to take appropriate action. I can tell you this, having been there, it may or may not be simple, easy, and quick.
Former President Clinton in New York late this afternoon. Our senior analyst, Jeff Greenfield, is here, and you got a couple things you want to talk about. Let me ask you something just quickly.
Please.
Because when I saw the former president in that scene today, I wondered if that wasn't going to spark some resentment by the people, by some people who don't like him very much, that he was trying to steal the stage, steal the spotlight, and he's not the president anymore.
It's possible. I mean, the political sensitivities in a story this overwhelming, the only one that I know that we've seen was the determination of the White House to shoot, to knock down any notion that he didn't get back to Washington. Yes. When Bill Southwire at the Times wrote about it, they gave him extraordinary information. So I assume that may play.
All right, I want to get you quickly to where you want to go here. The messages coming out of the White House, are we getting back to normal, or are we not?
Well, I think it's beyond the White House. I think all of us are desperately searching for some signs of reassurance. I mean, the fact that there was such joy at the news, which turned out, unfortunately, to be false, that they found 5 firefighters. When you look at what that news would have been had it been true, 5 lives saved, 5,000?
Yeah.
I was thinking that maybe reassurance isn't really what we need now. I was thinking of Winston Churchill, who we all know as the man who rallied Great Britain in its worst hour, and he once went on the radio and said to his people, "The news from France is very bad." And I think what he was saying was, I'm going to level with you and tell you the seriousness of the situation so that you will know when I ask of you to be brave and to do this, you will know that I'm telling you the truth. I think this if you look at what happened, not just Tuesday, a little more than 60 hours ago.
Yeah, a little bit.
But the fact that the stock markets have been closed since longer than in the Depression. We have, that we've evacuated the House and Senate. We need to face head on how rough this is.
The problem in part is, I mean, I don't want to suggest this is the problem, is that every time we say something, do something that says this is really big, really bad, really awful, we are in a sense saying they won.
Well, when the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor and took out the Pacific Fleet, they won a battle. They knocked the United States flat on its back for a while. The important message then and now is to know that eventually this will not be permitted to stand. But they have, I said earlier tonight that I think it's really way past time we stop talking about this as a senseless act. From the perspective of the folks who did this, evil, yeah, monstrous, yeah, senseless, no. It was exactly what they wanted to do. And part of, I think, what a great nation has to do is to assess the fact that we have been hit in a way we have never been hit in our history. Because that's when you begin to measure what has to be done.
So we accept this horrible reality, which is not, in fact, it seems to me something in modern political times we do very comfortably. We don't, political leaders, at least not in the last 20 years or so, have not been much willing to say it's really bad.
They haven't had to. I mean, except for Oklahoma City, which was a 100. Part of what's gone on here is that a lot of, I think, the crises, when we talk about crises, they have been not real. Yeah. Even the Gulf War, which could have put many, many American service people at risk, turned out to be a walkover. And so we've had it very easy. I said to you 2 days ago on the roof, this may have been the day that America's luck ran out. That's something that we haven't had much experience facing. And we're telling each other everything is going to be different now. But I think it begins with a really honest assessment of what has happened. And what has happened, it's not something you can say, well, yes, we took a blow. This was something that's going to require something we have not asked of this country, literally, in 6 decades.
It's a very sobering way to look at this. Yeah.
But
I'm not suggesting for a moment it's not the right way to look at it. It is just a kind of reality that I think we resist.
Well, of course we do, and that's why we look for reassurance in the possible story of people being saved and the good works that people are doing. But if we're if we're serious as a country about what has to be done, it begins by measuring what has happened. And you know, a friend of mine who I saw yesterday said, "I was looking for you for reassurance," and I said, "Well, I'll be glad to provide some. You know, eventually this country's going to prevail, but
not tomorrow." Thanks, Jeff. Senior analyst Jeff Greenfield joins us for a bit. We're about 4 minutes past 11 o'clock Eastern Time. Some of you may be tuning in, and we want to update you on where we have been and where we're headed now. Here are some of the latest developments this evening. Sources say at least 8 people are arrested at New York's Kennedy and LaGuardia airports. 4 of them were challenged at the gates or at the counters of one of the airports on the day of the hijackings. The suspects are in custody for, among other things, carrying false documents, including one man who was posing as a pilot. Officials trying to see if or how they might be connected to the tragedies of Tuesday. The president says the Pentagon says the president is considering activating reserve troops to relieve National Guard troops that have been patrolling U.S. airspace since Tuesday's terrorist attack. And in Manhattan, a city armory near Gramercy Park is converted into a center for those who have been waiting for word on their loved ones. It is one of those places that will break your heart. Mayor Giuliani urges residents to have patience, with hundreds of New Yorkers pitching in as volunteers to help find the missing. And in a rare show of unity in Congress, the Congress has moved towards passing a $40 billion bill for recovery efforts and to combat terrorism in the country, and that is just a down payment, just a beginning. Search and rescue crews continue their search for survivors. Grieving relatives are pleading for information about their loved ones, and CNN's Maria Hinojosa has their story now.
Just 7 weeks ago, Ann McGovern posed with her new grandson minutes after he was born.
I've never seen her look so happy as when he was born. She was there. She was so excited.
But now her daughter Terry wants that smiling picture on television. Her mother worked on one of the top floors of the World Trade Center. Her daughter wonders if anyone has seen her alive.
We were interviewed by police detectives, and we had filled out a questionnaire, and it was really like, what jewelry would she have been wearing? Do you know what she had on? Did she have any identifying body marks?
Her sister Liz worked in the World Financial Center across the street, but managed to escape. She was supposed to meet her mother that day for lunch.
I was just about to call her, and I can't believe it. I don't think it's set in yet. I just feel so powerless, and I wish I could have done something.
That same awful feeling consumed an emergency center on Lexington Avenue, where authorities are compiling a list of the missing. It's become a place of public grieving and a place to hope for miracles.
He was on 104th floor, Cannon Fitzgerald. We've gone to hospitals. We've called every hotline. They don't know where we can't find him. He's not on any list. So.
Hope is the word, the emotion that keeps these people going. But that hope hits hard against the reality that thousands of body bags have already arrived into New York City.
The triage centers remain relatively quiet. The one at Stuyvesant
At a center for Mexican immigrants, 15 friends are confirmed dead so far. Radios are kept on in hopes there'll be word of hundreds of others, immigrants from Mexico who labored in the Twin Towers, hoping to make a better life.
In my heart, I feel that I'm crying.
But there is not much concrete news for these people today, just fears for the worst.
My mother was so excited that my son was born. She was there at the birth 7 weeks ago, and he's not going to know her.
And so there's resignation. Maria Hinojosa, CNN, New York.
When we began this program an hour or so ago, we began with a report from correspondent Gary Tuchman down at Ground Zero, and he had some extraordinary pictures of Ground Zero. Really, some of the most dramatic pictures of the area we've seen. Gary is now back with us and has the engineer who shot those pictures, which will allow us to find out more about what the engineer saw and allow you to see those pictures again. Gary?
Well, that's right. The engineer's name is Rob Matthews. He's actually an urban planner. That's his day job. But for the first couple of days of this rescue and recovery operation, he went out to help volunteer. And he had a camera with him. And today he took his camera and he took pictures that offer a perspective that you haven't seen before tonight. Rob, what we're going to do is we're going to start rolling the pictures right now. We're going to give you a look at the pictures. You can tell us about what you shot. But you were actually in a building next to the World Trade Center, which is called the World Financial Center Complex. And tell us what we're looking at right now.
Inside now we're looking at the 22nd floor on the east facade of number 2 World Financial Center.
Now this is right across the street from the World Trade Center. This was a building that the plane did not crash into, but this is the damage you see.
Exactly. This was the shock wave that burst through the windows, blew the debris inside, and this is a view down directly into the hold, directly into ground zero from the 22nd floor of the World Financial Center.
Now we've had some pictures from the ground, but the news media is not given the access that a guy like you who volunteered has gotten. And that's why it's the first time we've seen that shot from the top, and it really shows you just how huge that hole is. But I'm very surprised at all the damage inside this building across the street from the World Trade Center.
Well, the whole eastern facade of this building was blown off, the glass at least, and from the shockwave. And there's a piece of World Financial Center number 1, the American Express building. As tower number 1 toppled over, it took out a little piece of the southeast corner.
And that's the one thing we want to say, that American Express building is one of the buildings they're fearful could possibly come down. Thank you very much for joining us, Rob. We appreciate it.
You're welcome.
The search continues tonight, but they expect rain to come down, and that could be a major problem as they continue to look for victims. Back to you, Eric.
Gary, thank you. No matter how many times we see those pictures, they remain extraordinary. We want to try something here. We'll see if this works. So many events, virtually all events, public gatherings, large group gatherings have been canceled since Tuesday. Football games won't go on. In Los Angeles, Hollywood Bowl tonight, a Wynton Marsalis concert is going on. And if our timing is right, we will listen in at just the right moment. Bear with us for a moment. We're going to get there. Again, this is a Wynton Marsalis concert at the Hollywood Bowl outside in Los Angeles. We don't know how many people. Something we used to know. We don't know how many people at the Hollywood Bowl tonight. We imagine that it was quite an emotional gathering when people arrived there. People have been glued to their TVs, haven't gotten out much. Marsalis moment, and a moment for the people who are there. A portion of the proceeds of the concert tonight will go to the American Red Cross. That was nice, wasn't it?
I want to tell you how appropriate it was for us to play that anthem.
Wouldn't argue with that one bit. Back to the other side of all of this. There have been so many lives lost. There are an estimated, I think 4,700 some still missing here in New York. So many stories. CNN's Peter Viles has the story of one New York company's devastating loss.
It is the saddest vigil you can imagine. Scott Hazelcorn's parents.
It's not even revenge. I mean, I just want to hear my son's voice.
Members of Jun Koo Kang's church.
We all pray every night.
John Perconti's wife, expecting their child in December.
He called me at 10 to 9 and said, our building has just been hit by a plane, turn on the news. And I changed the channel and I saw what happened. And I said, oh God, John, please get out of there safely. And he said, I love you, I have to go.
What links these stories is that all the missing worked at Cantor Fitzgerald, all above the 100th floor of the North Tower, the first one hit. Cantor is not a glamorous firm, but it is crucial, one of the world's largest bond trading firms. 1,000 people worked up there, fewer than 300 are accounted for, but it is not clear any of those now safe were on the top floors Tuesday morning.
I don't think anybody got out at this point, but we pray for miracles.
Scott Hazelcorn's parents suspect that their son did not run for his life.
He didn't care about himself. He only cared about
we said
his friends.
If Scott was there and he was getting out, he'd probably help everybody out in front of him. That's the kind of kid he was.
They gather at a city-designated center for relatives of the missing on 26th Street, where trees have become pleas for help. And further uptown at the Pierre Hotel, a gathering site for Cantor Fitzgerald families.
I don't think the company has the information that we need. I think they're sharing everything they know, but we have not heard of one survivor. We've not been able to validate any stories that we've heard.
There are official clearinghouses for information on the missing, and Cantor Fitzgerald is using them, but these friends and family members are convinced that any extra effort they can make on behalf of their loved ones is worth making. Peter Weil, CNN Financial News, New York.
The risk of giving you emotional whiplash here, there are also gestures going on in all parts of the country that will melt your heart. In this case, a show of sympathy from some who clearly are too young to even know what the word means. CNN's Kathy Slobogan with that.
Last night they said they ain't gonna move the buildings because they scared that they're gonna break some body bones.
Miss Connolly's 5th grade class is trying to make sense of a national tragedy.
A police officer had to get his leg amputated to get from under the rubble.
Like many schools across the country, Brown Street Academy in Milwaukee is letting its children ask questions and addressing their fears.
800 people did not die at the Pentagon. Not even close.
But while the teachers encouraged their children to talk, these 5th graders had something else in mind, something bigger.
I had 2 5th graders to come to my office, and they knocked on my door and said, Mrs. Robinson, we would like to come in and talk with you. Well, at the time, I was holding a meeting, so I said, sure, come in. And they looked over at me, and they said, Mrs. Robinson, we're hearing about this, but we're sitting here, we're doing nothing. What are we going to do? There's something that we can do.
Principal Linda Robinson was surprised by what she heard.
Looks good. I like that. Let's work together.
90% of the children here come from low-income families. But these children felt there were people who needed money more than they did. People who needed their help.
This old man came rolling home. They said to me, Mrs. Robinson, every person at least has pennies. We can at least give pennies. And we want to make it a drive where we can at least donate something to them.
Led by the 5th graders, the children of Brown Street Academy are holding a penny and clothing drive to help the victims of the plane crashes. They also came up with the idea of asking the Salvation Army to help them distribute what they collect. Linda Robinson says the drive has galvanized the school.
Students were coming off the bus. Miss Robinson, I have my pennies. Do you have yours? They were so energetic. I saw students getting off and they had their hands up and they were saying, we make a difference.
The children's idea has turned grief into pride.
It's changed conversations on the playground. Even in the hallways, conversations have changed. Students are now talking about what's happening in the news. They are reacting positively to this tragedy.
Brown Street Academy, one small ray of light in a dark time. Kathy Slobogan, CNN.
Sweet. We saw firsthand late last night how people are reacting to the people here in New York who are trying to find the victims of the tragedy. Some firefighters walked into a restaurant we were in, and people, well, let me put it this way. I guarantee you that they bought no drinks for themselves. People were very generous. They cheered them. It's the kind of thing that's happening all over this city, is people see better than ever, than they ever have before, I guess, those people who risk their lives to keep the city safe. Here's CNN's Richard Blystone.
These are the guys who run up the fire escape when everybody else is running down. The men who will get you out of an inferno 50 stories in the air or die trying. 30 men from this Midtown Manhattan firehouse may have died trying. They were among the first to reach the trade towers Tuesday, and they haven't come back.
So as you can see, the neighborhoods had an outpouring of love for us.
Night and day they come to leave a flower, light a candle.
I felt I did something, yes. I felt like I did something.
Hard-boiled New Yorkers.
When I was sitting out on somebody's car over there in disbelief, I had my head in my hands, and I felt somebody just kind of give a little squeeze on my arm. I look up, and it was just somebody walking past.
Total strangers, like this woman from Argentina, who says she had to come and touch the firemen. They're heroes, she says. They gave their lives, poor things, to save other people. These students from Montreal were here on a night on the town early Tuesday.
We happened to walk by, they're smiling. We said, hey, how's it going? Nice to meet you. We got on the truck, we took pictures, everybody was happy. And now we hear that some of the people who we met might be missing.
They were the first ones to go. It's just devastating. It's like, I can't believe we were here like 6 hours before this with those people.
You don't think much about firemen until you need them. But people are making up for that today, not waiting for a memorial to be built. They've created one outside the firehouse, more vibrant and more moving than anything a sculptor could carve out of stone.
Their courage and fearlessness just sets an example for the world. It's very, very powerful. And I'm honored. I'm honored to know they're just down the street from me.
If your friends are missing, it's a hard wait. A small distraction, in the words of support, the presence of food and flowers, and this present from Parsippany, New Jersey, to replace one of the station's 5 lost trucks.
Whatever you need it for, you got it. We just bought a new one. This is up for sale. You guys want it, you're more than welcome to it. We're still in business. The guys are going out. That's what we have to do. Protect the people, the city.
And so those lucky enough to have done more than wait go home for a rest, because it's not over. And it would be nice to think that in times to come, when the memories come flooding back, they will remember these as well. Richard Blystone, CNN, New York.
Well, Frank Donahue of the Red Cross is with us. I don't think he's surprised by the generosity that he's seen here in your own way, in the generosity business, I think. Just quickly, to show...
I was showing Aaron a sandwich.
Tell the story here.
First graders from Long Island made hundreds of these for the people at the Armory today, for the workers. They had little notes on it and a Hershey Kiss. I have to admit I ate the Hershey Kiss on the way over, but it's a sign, I think, of what so many people in the generosity, people, restaurants, everywhere, every shelter, every facility that we have going.
They made thousands of them, and being first graders, what kind of sandwich is it?
Peanut butter and jelly.
Yeah, PB&J. Let's talk about what people are going through. You didn't have to be in the ground zero area to be horribly affected by what happened there. You didn't need to lose a loved one. You just had to see the pictures.
Absolutely. The pictures are staggering. When I came over Tuesday over the Holland Tunnel, came into Holland Tunnel and saw New York, I'm reminded of 2 years ago when I was in Izmit, Turkey, and 20,000 people lost their life in that earthquake. The black cloud that hung over Turkey was the same cloud that was hanging over New York, and it's still there, the smoke. And everywhere I've turned, the emotion of people, the signs on trees and on telephone poles of loved ones missing, it's everywhere, this whole city.
One of the things that occurred to me this afternoon, I was talking to someone who had survived it, and I'd been in Oklahoma City a year after the bombing there, and people who survived these things, people, in this case, people who got out of the World Trade Center before they collapsed, go through a kind of post-traumatic stress where they, in fact, feel guilty for having lived.
Right. We have about 500 volunteer mental health workers, many of them at the Armory, in a variety of locations in the city that are helping people deal just with that, the guilt that I got out and my best friend didn't. And also, of course, the pain of family members that are looking to find people and are hearing nothing. There's not much to tell people at this point.
And just to stay with the survivors for a second, these things manifest itself in horrible ways, in divorce and depression. In Oklahoma City, at least, there were a number of suicides and suicide attempts. So it's hugely important for these people to get the kind of counseling and more, because you guys do triage counseling, really, right?
Right, correct, yeah.
I mean, get them early before something.
And then we try to push them into going to something more long-term, dealing with their clergyman or whoever, so that people don't continue to deal with this. As I was talking to some mental health people today, we have a city that's stunned. Many of the people that you saw around the Armory, around the whole city block in lines, are stunned. But after that stage comes a stage of anger. And that will be another stage. I'm glad Mayor Pataki has asked all of us to be patient, because I think that's something we all need to keep in mind.
On that subject of anger, I got to tell you that I thought today that, at least where the places I was, the city started to shift from shock to anger. I heard more people say angry things. We got to get these guys. We got to do this. But I mean, I think people have had it. They've had it with the threats. They've had it with the disaster. They have had it.
And I think it's such an important opportunity for all of us to send a different message to young people and to kids like this, that it's an opportunity for us as a country to come together. One of the things I've been saying to a number of people is, why a city like New York or on the East Coast do we ever have a blood shortage? The gift of life, why is that? It should be rare in this country. This is the most populated part of the nation, and it's the one with the greatest blood shortage in the nation. This should be a testimony to these people that lost their life, that we'll never let a blood shortage ever happen in this country again. That we will always try, at least, to give and to go the extra mile. And I think, hopefully, out of this tragedy, some good can come, and I hope that that's the kind of thing we can learn.
This is a couple of other areas here quickly. That whole question of how we talk about this to our kids is, I suspect, troubling to every one of us who has a child, in my case a 12-year-old, who yet again sees a shattering moment in her life and tries to make sense of it. And how do you do that?
Mm-hmm. The Red Cross, we have a lot of disaster preparation programs. We're actually in schools every day teaching little kids how to deal with disasters. And you'd be surprised, sometimes little children are a lot easier, a lot more able to deal with it because of the training and the things that we were already teaching them how to deal with. We have a number of programs now for children. We have coloring books and materials available. People should contact their local Red Cross, because you don't have to be in New York to talk to your child about what they saw or seeing every day on the television. It's an opportunity to sit down with your children, tell them some of these things, and there's tools available to you to do that.
I mean, it's a terribly difficult and complicated thing, and I don't want to wax on here, but you know, these kids have seen the horror of Columbine on television, and they've seen now this on television, and they see these things repeated over and over again, and they begin to think that they live in a truly evil world.
It's certainly expanding. The evil that we've seen in many faraway places has expanded. I was so touched yesterday, my cell phone rang. 2 kids that I know, I do a lot of work in Bosnia with the Red Cross. 2 kids from Bosnia called me to see if I was all right. I thought it's an amazing thing that 2 college students were calling here to see if friends in America were okay.
How long do you think that you'll have this sort of major operation in play?
Months. Months. This operation is just beginning, and all the folks that even live in the whole Wall Street area, Battery Park area, finding housing for those folks, all of these things. We'll be at this for a long time.
And when we, on Tuesday, we were talking about a critical shortage of blood. You mentioned there's almost an ongoing shortage of blood in an area like this. Some of that has to do with people's fears about giving blood, which they needn't fear, by the way. Do you still need it?
Blood is always needed. As fewer survivors are pulled from the building, you know, the blood need that was thought immediately isn't as great. But the Red Cross has blood on standby, ready to go. We continue to want people to always give the gift of life, and they should dial that 1-800-GIVE-LIFE and be ready when we do need it, that you're ready to do it.
But tell me if I heard this right, okay? What I think you just said is that maybe in terms of dealing with this moment, this crisis, the blood issue, the blood shortage issue, isn't what we thought it might be on Tuesday. I'm not suggesting people don't go out and do...
Correct.
Yeah.
I think that people are saying, you know, as the bloodlines are endless. All over the country, the phones are ringing off the hook. People want to give blood. because there's so many people have not been pulled from the wreckage that need blood. The demand hasn't been as great as initially thought, as we see on the television with all the doctors being released from hospitals that weren't needed. That's the unfortunate news.
Yeah. And you think you'll be going for months. Do the demands change day to day or week to week? Do you start to deal with different sets of problems?
Absolutely. I mean, we'll be looking at long-term recovery for people that have been displaced from the whole Wall Street neighborhood, for sheltering operations, emotional support for families, and all the complications that are involved in missing people. Missing people is something the Red Cross deals with in war-torn countries and now in America, and it's quite a long process.
We're not embarrassed at all or uncomfortable saying we appreciate your efforts, your good work. We know how tired you must be, how hard all of the volunteers must be for the work they've done. We appreciate it very much.
I'm very proud of what they're doing. They're great people.
Well, you should be. Thanks for coming in tonight. That's probably the last thing you need to do is come in and talk to us.
Happy to be here. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Donahue, Frank Donahue of the American Red Cross. Thank you. We, as a country, we are in the midst of finding what psychologists call a new normal. And one of the ways to do that, one of the signs of that at least, was that airports did open. It was kind of sporadic. But CNN correspondent James Sartori did get on a flight today, and here is his report of that first time in the sky.
The fifth busiest airport in the U.S. didn't look so busy Thursday morning as the nation's airlines struggled to regain their wings. One reason, no more curbside check-in. Bags must go to the counter. So now the crowds are inside. That's where I was, trying to get on a flight to Salt Lake City, Utah. It's about 2 hours before our plane takes off, and the line of passengers here is about as long as a football field. We're not even sure the plane's going to be taking off. I did see a crew starting to go through the gate. That's encouraging.
I'm not going to believe we're going until I'm on the flight and we take off the runway.
The FAA now requires airlines to scrutinize passengers more carefully. Some changes are apparent. One new question, do you have any sharp objects like knives or scissors?
They took my scissors away.
At the check-in?
I guess my scissors were too pointy at the top.
In addition to ID checks, some bags, apparently picked at random, are hand-searched, and only ticketed passengers allowed into the gate area. Less obvious changes, all aircraft must now be thoroughly checked for explosives before they're put into service for the day. The airlines are no longer permitted to carry cargo or mail within the continental U.S., except for the U.S. military. But with the tragedy in New York City still unfolding, no one seems to mind the delays and a little hassle.
You keep remembering so many people have it so much worse. I mean, this is nothing. You know, if you don't get out today, I don't get out today. At least I'm here and not there. So.
Some say Americans haven't paid enough attention to airline security.
We want things very convenient. We're a convenience-oriented people, and you can't have secure convenience.
Finally, after 3 hours to check in, we're off. Delta Flight 2027, a short 80-minute hop, which surprisingly is nearly empty, just 25 passengers. I wonder how many were left at the airport, still in line. All in all, our short trip was uneventful. A little longer, a few more questions than normal, but for a while at least, nothing about U.S. air travel will be normal. James Sartori, CNN, Salt Lake City, Utah.
Obviously, just one quick point to make on that. Things move, when they move today, a little more quickly than they're going to move when you get thousands of people and air traffic gets back to its normal levels. That's when things are really going to get a little sticky, or a lot sticky. One airline official told us the other day that 2 hours is not an unreasonable time to give yourself to get to the airport, and don't even think you can make the flight by running through the airport 15, 20 minutes beforehand. About half past the hour, 11:32 now. Quick look at where we've been and where we are headed here on this special report tonight. CNN has learned at least 8 people were arrested at New York's LaGuardia and John F. Kennedy airports amid concerns over a threat of yet another hijacking. 4 of them had been challenged at one of the airports on Tuesday morning, came back to JFK tonight and were taken into custody. They are being held for carrying fake documents. At the Pentagon, new flames late tonight coming from the wreckage of the plane crash there on Tuesday as crews continue to search for 126 people still believed missing in the rubble at the Pentagon. That fire still burns. It had been quiet there. And in New York, hundreds of family and friends of those missing from the World Trade Center are lined up at the city armory in a scene that will break your heart. They are waiting to register their loved ones on a missings list, clinging to pictures, desperately hoping someone will have some information, some word on the whereabouts of their missing friend or husband or boyfriend, girlfriend, what have you. The armory staying open 24 hours a day. Quick update of where we've been. Search efforts have uncovered the flight data recorder now for the hijacked airliner that crashed in western Pennsylvania, about 80 miles outside of Pittsburgh on Tuesday. CNN's David Mattingly is standing by, Somerset County, Pennsylvania, with more on that. David, what can you tell us?
Aaron, this slow and meticulous crash investigation took a big step forward today with the discovery of the flight data recorder. According to the FBI, the device was discovered inside the impact crater. That's the large blackened pit that was created when Flight 93 crashed here Tuesday morning. The device now destined for Washington, D.C. for further examination. The flight data recorder is important because it will allow investigators to retrace the functions of the aircraft prior to the crash. Word of its discovery came after it was learned today that small charred pieces of wreckage are now turning up in towns here as far as 8 miles away from the crash site. More indications of just how powerful the force behind this crash and explosion truly was. The recovery of the flight data recorder raises hopes here at the crash site of a quick recovery of the next important piece of evidence, the cockpit voice recorder. That device could tell us what was happening with the people on the aircraft, what was happening after those heart-wrenching phone calls from passengers aware of what the terrorists were planning to do, saying that they were planning to fight back, to challenge the 4 hijackers who had taken their airplane. A heroic scenario that could explain why the plane crashed here instead of continuing on to Washington, D.C. and to targets like the White House, the Capitol building, or maybe even Air Force One. For now, the search continues and will begin anew in the morning, as well as the painful process of recovering and identifying the remains of the 45 people who were on board. Aaron?
Any idea? Well, I have a couple things actually. Any idea when we will hear what is on that flight data recorder? I know they have it. I suspect it's not going to be tomorrow. Do you have any feel for that?
The FBI is running this investigation here as a crime scene, and they are strictly by the book. They are not speculating about anything. So no word on how long it might be before we get any kind of information back. The NTSB will be here tomorrow, and they might be able to answer those questions for us.
And you know, one of the great mysteries here is where that plane was in fact headed. Anything new on that? Have you picked up anything there on what the target might have been?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
The focus has been entirely on what's going on here, and there has been a great deal of determination and resolve to stay concentrated on the task at hand. And it is a daunting task because it is a very large area, and there are very, very small pieces of wreckage that they have to try and locate.
David, thank you. I apologize there for blindsiding you. I didn't mean to do that. Thank you. It's just one of those days where I haven't had a chance to talk to everybody tonight, and sometimes those things happen. We want to turn a corner here and take a look at how the United States might respond to what has happened, and perhaps how the United States should respond. Peter Bergen is a CNN terrorism analyst, and he joins us. Also, William Luers is with us as well to join in this conversation. Good evening to you. You have been patiently waiting in this hot room tonight. And Peter, I know you're there. And Mr. Luers, wait another minute for me. Let me start with Peter. Peter, if you had to bet here, what do you think the response, how massive the response are we going to see?
Well, let me say that I met with bin Laden in 1997 in Afghanistan, and if a military operation is being contemplated to take him out or snatch him in some way, that would be an operation that would encounter considerable resistance for the following reasons. Bin Laden, when I met with him, was surrounded by a group of at least a couple of dozen heavily armed men who were armed with RPGs and Russian submachine guns. They're highly motivated. They're prepared to die. And that was just in the course of just doing an interview. Obviously, bin Laden must be very concerned about his security right now, and he has hundreds of followers who might be surrounding him. Also, any American military operation in Afghanistan would be conducted in some of the most inhospitable terrain in the world. It's a rocky, mountainous, desert region. It's an area with which bin Laden is very familiar and with which Americans aren't very familiar. The last time America had a presence in Afghanistan was in 1989. Since then, the embassy there has been closed. So the information the United States has about the country is second-hand and old. Aaron.
And so that kind of surgical mission, go in there and get him, if that's what we're talking about, would be very difficult to do. And in fact, the United States hadn't had a whole lot of success with that sort of operation.
Well, let's think about Somalia, where 18 American servicemen died in a very intense two-day firefight. We were trying to snatch or kill Mohammed Aidi, the clan leader there, if you remember, in 1993. That was an unmitigated disaster. This would be much tougher, I think, because A, there's no element of surprise. Bin Laden knows that we're coming after him, and B, it's a country in Somalia there were 28,000 American soldiers who had been there for several months, and this is not going to be the situation in Afghanistan. We're going to go in. We're going to not know much about this. If we do go in, we're not going to know much about the terrain. And we're going to be faced with people whose main mission in life is to die. I mean, these people want to die. They think they're instantly going to paradise, and they're very prepared to die for their leader.
Turn to Mr. Lourdes here. What's your fear? What's your worst fear in all this?
My fear is that we will come off to the world as trigger-happy rather than intelligent, resolved, and determined to get this done. Let me just say, when the Second World War began, after Pearl Harbor, we first had to figure out how we're going to defend our country at home, get our security in place. Then we had to build a capacity to do that, to take on the Japanese and the Germans. And we didn't have the capacity for either one. And it took time. That war took 4 years. And I would argue that this is so serious, and this is so long-term, that we need to develop the capacity, which is really anti-American, to deal with this type of challenge to our society. The airplane thing is only one small element of dealing with the threat of terrorism in our society. And then secondly, we have to begin to develop the type of intelligence capacity that will enable us to deal with the broad issue. It's not just Osama bin Laden. It's a huge problem.
But look, tell me if you think this is fair, that there are really two issues on the table tonight. There is the issue of who committed this atrocity. That's issue number one. And what are we going to do about that? And that plays to, it is connected to issue number two, which is the broader question of how does our nation, how do all nations, all civilized, responsible nations, however you want to put it, how do they deal with this broader problem of terrorism? But why do you think it's necessary to link them? Why not deal with one at a time?
Because this network is not just Osama bin Laden. It's a network that has penetrated our society, the Middle East, but Europe, and they're everywhere. And I don't believe for a minute that the thousands of people out there will be affected if we kill, if we're able to kill, and as you just heard, it's going to be very difficult to do that, Osama bin Laden. I mean, this isn't about revenge. This is about winning. And I think it's going to take a long time. It's not simply who did that. Many of the people who did it are now dead. They died in those aircraft. Who planned it? It's probably much more difficult to find that out. And I'm merely suggesting that as angry as this city is and this country is, and as ready as we are to be awakened to the fact that there's a world out there that we've got to understand better and deal with better, and that there's a world in here that we have to protect better, that we've got to take our time at doing that. This isn't about a trigger-happy America. This is about a determined, powerful, intelligent America.
We have to think, angry America.
We have to think better than this guy does and these people do, and we have to shoot better. And I think it's going to take us a while. And I, for one, am not anxious to drop bombs and shoot at people. I think we should root out these problems wherever they are in our society, build up our forces, and develop our intelligence capacity so that over the next, I think it'll take a couple of years to get this thing resolved. And we've got to be ready for that. This is a long struggle.
Just, Peter, quickly before you get away, I wonder, just in 20 seconds or so, if you agree with that what we're looking at, if the world is looking at eliminating terrorism, and I must admit, that sounds like a pretty tall task to me, if A, you think it's possible at all.
Well, if we're talking about, let's say, just eliminating Osama bin Laden, obviously that would have some effect on his network, which is clearly the main terrorist threat the United States faces, because he has a certain charismatic presence and he's regarded as a leader. But the inherent problems wouldn't go away. There's a set of people who are opposed to United States policies in the Middle East, and those people aren't going to magically change their views overnight if their leader is assassinated or magically dies of some mysterious illness. So I think I would agree largely this is a long-term thing. Eliminating him tomorrow would certainly solve some short-term problems, but it wouldn't be the end of the whole story.
Peter, thanks. Good to talk to you again. Mr. Lewis, nice to meet you. The UN Association, the chairman thereof. Appreciate your coming in and your patience today.
Thank you.
It's a very provocative way to look at this. It's probably healthy to get it on the table as well. It is particularly healthy, I think, given how many times in the last couple of days we have heard the word war thrown around. We are at war. This is a new war. This is the first war of the 21st century. This is World War III. We have heard all of that. But what is war? Here's CNN national correspondent Bruce Morton.
World War II brought Americans together. Most believed that Nazi Germany and Imperial Japan were evil and aggressive. Americans demanded victory. The phrase of the day was unconditional surrender. Korea and Vietnam, in contrast, divided the country. Vietnam, in particular, left Americans suspicious, leery of wars, and in the conflict since, the motto seems to have been, bomb all you want, but we can't stand American casualties. That seems different now. No yellow ribbons, bring the hostages home, please. Flags this time, half-staff but proud. People are lining up to give blood. The Red Cross 800 number logged 700,000 calls in the first 6 hours after an appeal went out. Some military recruitment officers see an increased interest. And the country seems prepared to send its young people into harm's way.
I think the United States is in a long twilight struggle against these forces of evil that have chosen to destroy us because we are good. And I believe that it may take a lot of time, a lot of American treasure, and perhaps some American blood.
Make no mistake about it, my resolve is steady and strong about winning this war that has been declared on America.
A goal of victory, not compromise. And later, wars change countries. World War II made the United States a world power committed to an international role. Isolationism left behind. Vietnam left the United States more cynical. Americans had learned their government could lie to them. This time, unity so far, agreement on a goal so far. Will that change if the struggle is long? We can't know. The fight is just beginning. Bruce Morton, CNN, Washington.
Former General Wesley Clark knows a thing or two about war, and you more than likely know a thing or two about him. You've seen him a lot, former NATO commander. He joins us from Atlanta tonight. Talk a little more about all of this. General Clark, good evening. Try it again, one more time, and then we'll figure out where we are. General Clark, are you able to hear me? Okay, we'll try and put the plugs together and figure that out and get back to General Clark if we can. Jonathan Aiken now has more on the comfort Americans are finding in their own flag.
They're sprouting like flowers, flying from houses, waving from cars, hung over highways, draped over walls. Anywhere you could put a flag, you're likely to find one.
How can you not? How can you not? Just to show support for our country, for the people, for the families that have lost people. And it's only by the grace of God we're not one of them.
You may be seeing a lot more. Congress wants flags flying coast to coast for the next 30 days.
It's right here,
Yeah.
People are wasting little time. At this flag shop in suburban Washington, business has been so brisk they can't take the money fast enough. Can't keep the waiting in line short enough.
Probably about a half an hour, but it's well worth the wait.
Which beats finding no flags at all. This Virginia Walmart is sold out and waiting for more.
We're hoping they have had to step up production of American flags.
No flag shortage in Los Angeles. You'll find one in every daily news. Children across the country have been busy too, marching in Minnesota or just drawing flags in San Francisco. Grown-ups are busy wearing flags on their heads, their chest, and figuratively at least, on their sleeves.
I feel very helpless because we're all the way in California and all these poor people in New York and Washington are hurting. And so I thought this would be a way to show that I'm a true American, I believe in the flag, I believe in freedom.
The Pledge of Allegiance is making a big comeback too.
I said the Pledge of Allegiance for the first time in a long time. Because I've kind of had the belief sometimes that there's not liberty and justice for all. And I said it today. I was proud to do it.
Some people may think it's corny to fly the flag all the time. After all, there's Flag Day and Memorial Day and the 4th of July, and isn't that enough? Well, not today. Not anytime soon. Jonathan Aiken for CNN, Washington.
Well, we've seen a lot of flags in New York today, or maybe it is that we notice them more. Let's roll the dice one more time. General Wesley Clark is in Atlanta now. There you are. General Clark joins us. It's nice to talk to you again, sir. Help me with a couple of things. We were talking about how the United States might respond to this, and this always comes down, I guess it comes down two ways. Intelligence, one, but military, another. Is the military really set up to deal with this kind of enemy, or is the military designed to deal with countries, in a sense?
Well, we've got a lot of different capabilities in the military. Certainly we can deal with an enemy that's like this. But it won't be the kind of military operation that Americans envision. It won't be another, in all probability, it won't be another Gulf War. You're not going to see a massive deployment of troops. You're not going to have a big buildup that way. You're going to see a lot of diplomatic meetings. There'll be a lot of things going on underneath the surface. Occasionally people will be arrested. And if the work is done right, you may never see it until it's over, and those who are responsible, that international terrorist network, is taken down and either brought in for justice or eliminated in some other way.
So you don't necessarily see the response. I suspect a lot of us have seen the response as some sort of, somebody's going to get bombed, okay? I mean, that's the first thing we're going to see. And what I hear you saying is maybe that not only isn't what's going to happen, but maybe that isn't what ought to happen.
You can't tell right now, Aaron. It's too early, because if there are appropriate targets and the cruise missiles or the bombing is the right weapons, then that's what we'll use. But it's only partly a matter of training facilities and headquarters. It's really a matter of people. And before we attack facilities, we've got to make sure that that's really productive. It may not be productive in this case, but it may. If it disrupts terrorist organizations, if it puts them on the run, if it makes it more difficult for them to plan another action against us, then that's what we should do. But the main work here is not against places. It's not against fixed facilities. It's against the network, the people, the leaders, supporters, those who are out in countries all around the world who are couriers and providing funds and information and casing out operations and planning things and reporting back in. There are cells and various headquarters probably in dozens of countries, and they all need to be taken down, and it mostly won't be done by bombing.
In dozens of countries?
That would be my appreciation of this, yes. It's a very broadly based network. And you may remember, if you go back over the incidents in the last decade, there were incidents that in the Philippines where people were apprehended before they could board an airliner. Probably there was support in the Philippines. There have been incidents elsewhere, and there are quiet support cells in countries where there have probably never been incidents. This is a very carefully prepared network. And it's going to be tough to take it down.
We may have talked about this the other afternoon, but one of the problems here, it seems to me, is there's kind of a pernicious cycle here that you go in and you respond to these things, and in doing so, you are successful to whatever degree you are successful. But one of the things that seems to inevitably happen is people get angry for the response. People sympathize, and they end up they become martyrs. They get more sympathizers. There are more training camps, more terrorists, and more trouble.
Well, that's why operating inside an international coalition is so important. Now, yesterday and today, all kinds of leaders from around the world, including Mr. Arafat and many Arab leaders, have expressed their full support. They want to join this coalition. Good. The place to start is their work at home in their own countries. There are those who probably applauded this. There are some who sympathized with it, even though they didn't express it. There may be other cells in those countries. These people are all part of the network that has to be taken down. So I hope that people will appreciate the work that's being done. The great work that's been done so far by the FBI here is just representative of the kind of work that's going to have to be done everywhere. And it won't look like, in all probability, it won't look like Desert Storm. Now, if there are state sponsors to this, and the state sponsors determine that they want to take the heat, then it may take other types of action. But
let me ask you a quick question, see if I get a quick answer. I know that military guys worry about having political support here. As you look at this right now, obviously the country's enraged. Do you worry that the outrage will not last long enough for the planning, the intelligence, and the response to actually take place?
Well, I think we've got good political support right now, and what it appears is the guidance is there. There's a determination to take this fight the whole way, and then the political leaders and the people that care in this country will have to resolve to maintain their determination. It may take weeks, months, or longer to finish this fight.
General Clark, it's good to talk to you again.
Nice to talk to you. Thank you.
Always an interesting conversation. Former General Wesley Clark used to be the NATO commander and now is helping us sort through some of the events of the last few days. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
A couple of other things before we say goodnight tonight. Just as the skyline of New York has been altered, perhaps forever, so has the lifestyle of millions of New Yorkers who've seen their city change. Whether that change is permanent or temporary, we cannot now say. Here's CNN's Jeannie Mose.
New York is always noisy, but these days it's wailing. A city of sirens and face masks and evacuations, from Grand Central to Macy's to the building that houses CNN's New York Bureau.
Everybody back!
New Yorkers seem taken aback.
Why did you move back? Come on.
Shaken even by a false alarm, clinging to cell phones, talking about the latest rumor, the latest scare.
It's an uneasy feeling.
Uneasy having seen apocalyptic images of ashes raining down and later being brushed off like a blanket of dirty snow. Uneasy over the smell of smoke, depending on which way the wind blows. Uneasy at the sight of police checkpoints.
Where do you live?
Aimed at keeping folks out of lower Manhattan. Only now have those forced to evacuate.
She's a good girl. She's a scaredy cat.
Been allowed back into their apartments to retrieve their pets.
You got 5 minutes inside to gather up your dog, your cat, whatever it is.
Retrieved pets like Alexander have much in common with their owners.
He's just, a little insecure and scared, but he's fine.
Those helping with the search have become heroes, and authorities are having to turn away volunteers.
Actually, what's happened is too many guys, and it's starting to trip over each other.
Well-wishers are practically force-feeding rescuers. Flags have sprouted all over New York and all over New Yorkers. Some are out to make a buck.
Little ones are cute.
Hey, free flags, free flags, free flags. Andy, give this man one free. There we go. There you go. Give that little baby one, too.
These two sought peace of mind on rollerblades.
It's very surreal. Well, it's out of a bad sci-fi film, but every morning you wake up and you're like, it wasn't a dream, it wasn't a movie, it actually happened.
And some moviegoers are waiting in line, wearing masks. An outdoor cafe just isn't the same when you're obliged to cover your face instead of your lap. Jeannie Mose, CNN, New York.
And finally from us this evening, over the last couple of days, we have seen, all of us, the stunned reaction of people in New York and in Washington, many of whom have spoken about how helpless they feel in the face of this horrible tragedy. The feelings are much the same in small-town America tonight, as CNN's Candy Crowley reports.
Berryville, Virginia is an hour's drive from the Pentagon, far enough away not to have heard terrorism's roar, close enough to feel its pain.
I spent all day yesterday at the Pentagon working the fire.
A pretty terrible scene.
Yeah, it's about as unbelievable as TV doesn't do it any justice. It's horrible.
After 48 hours on call, D.C. firefighter Craig Hageman came home to Berryville and bought a couple of flags.
I believe in my country. I believe in everything we're about. And the more I support it, and the more everybody else will support it, and it's just keeping the faith.
Berryville's the kind of place where the barber is a minister and the mayor and his mother run the flower shop. The kind of place where putting up flags was second nature. No meetings, no proposals. It just kind of happened.
They came out late on Tuesday, and just sort of a spontaneous thing from the town office. So we decided that we have these flags that we obviously put up for Memorial Day and Labor Day and 4th of July and special occasions like that, and just thought this was a good time to put them out, just to show some support.
They are everywhere now. They hang from the mirrors of Potter's barbershop.
Well, we all love a country. We have big pride in the country, and it's hard to